What secrets lie buried beneath the sands of time, waiting for eyes that dare to see? For centuries, civilizations have vanished, leaving only fragments, enigmatic ruins, cryptic inscriptions, and artifacts that defy explanation. Some discoveries whisper of knowledge lost, of technologies and rituals that challenge everything we thought we knew. Today, we step into the shadows of the past, uncovering 3 hours of ancient archaeological revelations, each more astonishing than the last. Join me as we unravel these mysteries, piece by piece, and journey deeper into the stories that the earth has long kept hidden. Perched atop a rugged hill in the verdant expanse of Galicia, San Cibrán de las Hillfort emerges like a silent sentinel from a distant age. The first sight is deceptively simple. Low stone walls, irregular terraces carved into the hillside, and the soft outline of what might have once been dwellings or defensive structures. From this vantage point, the surrounding landscape stretches endlessly, rolling fields, dense forests, and winding streams that would have offered both sustenance and strategic advantage to those who called this place home. But beyond the quiet beauty, there is an undercurrent of enigma. Every stone seems to hold a story, every path a trace of human intent that predates recorded memory. Archaeologists classify San Cibrán de las as a castro, a type of fortified settlement common in northwestern Iberia during the late Iron Age. Radiocarbon dating suggests that the site was inhabited somewhere between the 4th and 1st centuries BCE, though exact timelines are difficult to pin down. The people who built it were part of the Castro culture, a society known for its hilltop settlements, fortified enclosures, and a distinct style of pottery and metallurgy. Excavations have revealed remnants of circular and rectangular stone structures, hearths, storage pits, and artifacts that hint at a community both practical and ritualistic, concerned with survival, protection, and perhaps status. Yet, for all that is known, there is an undeniable sense of ambiguity. Some terraces are unusually broad, almost impossibly so, suggesting labor-intensive construction with no immediately apparent purpose. Certain wall alignments do not conform to natural defensive logic. They curve and twist in ways that confound straightforward explanation. Could these have been designed to manipulate sunlight or shadow, to mark astronomical events, or to encode symbolic meaning lost to us now? The evidence is tantalizing but frustratingly incomplete. Walking through the remains, it is impossible not to notice the way the site interacts with the landscape. Some stones, weathered by centuries of wind and rain, bear shapes that appear intentional, markings or carvings too subtle to be immediately recognizable. Scholars debate whether these are purely ornamental, functional, or something more mysterious. Could these patterns have served as spiritual or ritual markers? Were they guides for the living, the dead, or perhaps both? The lack of definitive answers invites speculation, and yet the speculation is grounded in the tangible reality of stones, earth, and human effort. Interestingly, a number of local legends persist around San Cibrán de las. Some speak of the hill as a place of ancient gatherings, where leaders and druids convened to make decisions that shaped the surrounding territories. Others claim that the site was never fully completed, abandoned abruptly under circumstances now lost to time. The intersection of legend and archaeology is delicate. The stories are not evidence, yet they echo a truth that is harder to quantify: the enduring human fascination with the unknown and the sacred. There is also the question of why this particular location was chosen. Its elevation offers clear views of neighboring valleys, but the shape of the hill itself is unusual, with terraces following natural contours in a way that suggests both practicality and design. Could the builders have been attuned to forces we no longer measure? Magnetic fields, water veins, or celestial alignments? Some researchers have proposed that certain castros were deliberately sited according to lunar or solar cycles, creating spaces that resonated with astronomical significance. Though these hypotheses remain speculative, they add a layer of intrigue to an already enigmatic site. Artifacts recovered here offer glimpses into daily life, yet they too raise questions. Pottery fragments hint at trade and domestic activity, while iron tools suggest craftsmanship and survival skills. But in the distribution of these items, there are irregularities. Some areas are densely littered with domestic debris, while others, expected to show similar patterns, are curiously empty. What caused these differences? Was it functional zoning, social hierarchy, or events that disrupted normal patterns of life? Each fragment of evidence invites closer examination, yet simultaneously deepens the mystery. Even the modern observer cannot help but sense the intangible presence of history here. There is a rhythm to the place. The wind through the terraces, the distant echo of water, the way sunlight moves across stone walls at certain times of the year. Walking among the remnants, one might imagine the lives of those who lived, labored, and perhaps even worshipped here. And yet, the more one imagines, the more questions arise. What were their fears, their hopes, their rituals? How did they understand the world around them, and how much of that understanding remains invisible to us? San Cibrán de las Hillfort is more than a collection of stones and terraces. It is a nexus of the known and the unknown, a place where empirical study meets the realm of the speculative. Every excavation, every survey, every careful measurement brings us closer to understanding, but also reminds us of the limits of knowledge. History, in its silence, challenges us to think beyond what is immediately visible. It asks us to imagine, to question, and to remain open to possibilities that may never be fully explained. And so, as the wind rustles through the ancient terraces and the sun dips behind distant hills, one cannot help but wonder, what stories remain unspoken here? What truths lie just beyond reach, waiting for the next generation of seekers to uncover them? The mystery endures, patient and unmoving, inviting us to look closer, think deeper, and ask questions that may never have answers. As we leave the windswept terraces of Galicia behind, our journey takes us across the Mediterranean Sea to the island of Majorca, where another enigma of the ancient world awaits. Here, amid rolling plains and gentle hills, the San Fornés settlement rises quietly from the landscape, its taliotic stones weathered by centuries of sun, wind, and salt-laden air. At first glance, it appears deceptively simple: low, circular towers, fragmented walls, and irregular clusters of stone foundations scattered across the terrain. Yet, as with San Cibrán de las, the first impression belies a deeper complexity, a subtle architecture whose design still challenges modern understanding. Taliotic settlements, named after the talayots or megalithic towers that punctuate the Majorcan landscape, flourished during the Bronze and Iron Ages, roughly between 1000 BCE and 300 BCE. San Fornés, one of the most significant of these sites, offers a rare window into the lives of the island's prehistoric communities. Archaeologists have catalogued circular dwellings, subterranean silos, stone corridors, and the remains of ceremonial enclosures. Excavations suggest a society that was highly organized, capable of large-scale construction, and deeply attuned to its environment. Yet, despite decades of study, many aspects of San Fornés resist straightforward interpretation. The talayots themselves are remarkable. These cylindrical or square stone towers, often rising several meters high, appear as if they were placed with deliberate precision. But to what end? Were they defensive structures, signaling stations, or perhaps markers of territorial control? Some researchers point to alignments with distant hills or valleys, hinting at an understanding of sightlines and landscape that borders on architectural foresight. Yet other features seem deliberately enigmatic: walls that intersect at unexpected angles, platforms whose function is unclear, and carefully positioned stones that seem to serve no practical purpose. Each element suggests intentionality, but the logic behind it remains elusive. The settlement's circular dwellings offer another puzzle. Within these simple structures, archaeologists have uncovered pottery fragments, tools, and traces of domestic activity, yet the layout is far from uniform. Some houses cluster together in ways that suggest communal or family organization, while others stand in relative isolation. Occasionally, a dwelling is disproportionately large or contains unusual artifacts, raising questions about social hierarchy, ceremonial significance, or the presence of specialized functions we cannot yet define. Could these patterns reflect a society deeply conscious of ritual, status, or even cosmic cycles? Or are they merely the product of pragmatic adaptation to the island's resources? One of the most intriguing features of Sun Fornays is its subterranean silos and storage chambers, carefully carved into bedrock or constructed with precise stone masonry. These spaces indicate advanced knowledge of materials, weight distribution, and perhaps environmental control. How did ancient builders achieve such durable structures without the aid of modern engineering tools? And why were some of these chambers positioned in locations that seem inconvenient for everyday use? Some have speculated that the silos might have had a dual purpose, both practical and symbolic, perhaps serving as repositories not only for food but also for sacred objects or ritual offerings. While speculation must remain cautious, the architecture itself silently invites us to ponder the intentions of its creators. Adding to the intrigue is the settlement's relationship with the surrounding landscape. From certain vantage points, the telayouts and dwellings seem almost to echo the natural contours of the hills, as if integrated into the land rather than imposed upon it. Could the builders have been aware of forces we no longer measure? Patterns of sunlight and shadow, prevailing winds, or even magnetic anomalies? Some fringe theories suggest celestial alignments, proposing that certain towers correspond with solstices or equinoxes. Mainstream archaeology remains measured, yet these observations hint at a sophisticated awareness of the broader environment, an intelligence that may have extended beyond mere survival. Artifacts recovered at Sun Fornays offer tantalizing glimpses into daily life, yet they too provoke questions. Simple pottery fragments hint at domestic routine, while tools for farming, weaving, and metalworking speak to a versatile and skilled community. Yet these ordinary objects are juxtaposed with items that defy easy explanation: unusually shaped stones, enigmatic carvings, and arrangements of boulders that seem ceremonial in nature. Why would a community invest so much effort in creating objects or structures that appear to serve no practical function? What purposes were encoded in forms and patterns that we can no longer decipher? Each find adds both clarity and mystery, reminding us that human ingenuity often defies easy categorization. Even the settlement's broader context raises fascinating questions. Sun Fornays is part of a network of teleotic sites scattered across Majorca and neighboring islands, suggesting interaction, trade, or shared cultural norms. Yet each site has its own peculiarities: differences in tower shape, dwelling arrangement, and artifact composition that hint at localized experimentation or innovation. Was there a standardized approach to teleotic construction? Or did each community develop unique solutions in response to geography, resource availability, or social structure? The answer remains uncertain, leaving us to explore patterns in stone and earth without ever fully grasping the intentions behind them. Perhaps the most compelling aspect of Sun Fornays is the sense of lingering presence it conveys. Standing among the ruins, one can almost feel the echoes of those who built, lived, and perhaps worshipped here. The wind sweeps across terraces and towers, carrying with it the weight of centuries, while the sun casts shifting shadows that momentarily animate the stones, as if they remember past lives. It is a place where observation invites imagination. We may never know the precise motivations of its builders, yet the physical evidence allows us to trace a faint outline of their world, connecting us to minds long vanished. San Fornés, like San Cibrán de las and other enigmatic settlements, reminds us that the past is rarely fully accessible. Archaeology grants us fragments, stone, bone, and ceramic, but the decisions, beliefs, and knowledge of those who shaped the landscape remain largely invisible. Were these structures purely functional, or did they encode a sophisticated understanding of the natural and cosmic order? Did their creators intend to communicate with future generations, or were their actions entirely rooted in the present moment of survival and social organization? We cannot answer definitively, but the questions themselves are the portal into wonder. As the Mediterranean sun dips toward the horizon, illuminating the Talaiots in a golden glow, we are left with the quiet, persistent pull of mystery. San Fornés stands not only as a testament to human skill, but also as a challenge to modern understanding, a place where the past reaches across millennia, daring us to look closer, think deeper, and remain open to possibilities we cannot yet grasp. What else might this ancient settlement hide, buried in plain sight, waiting for the next careful observer to uncover its secrets? From the sunlit terraces of Majorca, our journey now carries us far north, to the windswept archipelago of Shetland, where another enigma of the ancient world emerges from mist and sea. Nestled on a narrow promontory at the edge of Clickamin Loch, the Clickamin Broch settlement rises from dark waters and rocky terrain like a memory etched in stone. The first view is striking. The Broch itself, a massive circular stone tower, dominates the landscape, surrounded by remnants of ancillary buildings and defensive walls. Reflections shimmer in the loch below, giving the impression that the settlement floats between earth and water, past and present. It is a place that seems to demand both reverence and careful observation. Brochs are among the most intriguing structures of Iron Age Scotland, their construction concentrated in the first few centuries BCE. Clickamin is one of the most well-preserved examples, offering a rare window into the lives of communities that thrived in a harsh and isolated environment. The central tower, its walls still formidable despite the erosion of centuries, suggests not only defensive purposes, but also remarkable architectural skill. The stones are massive, carefully shaped and fitted with precision, forming a spiral staircase that leads upward, a feat that even today would challenge modern builders without advanced tools. How did Iron Age societies achieve such enduring precision? What knowledge, lost to time, enabled them to construct these circular fortresses? The Broch does not stand alone. Surrounding it are the remains of ancillary structures, huts, storage buildings, and boundary walls that hint at the complexity of social life. Archaeologists have interpreted these features as part of a fortified community, one designed to endure both environmental pressures and human threats. Yet, the layout raises subtle but persistent questions. Certain walls appear overbuilt, others oddly positioned, suggesting intentions beyond mere defense. Could some of these design choices reflect ritual or symbolic significance? Were they markers of social hierarchy, or perhaps guides for ceremonies that have vanished from memory? Artifacts recovered at Clickamin provide glimpses of domestic life, pottery fragments, tools for weaving and metalwork, and the occasional ornament. Yet these items are sparse compared to the scale of the structures themselves. The Broch's enormous walls seem almost disproportionate to the daily lives suggested by the small objects left behind. Were these communities preparing for threats that never came? Or were the constructions themselves expressions of power and status, meant to awe and control rather than to protect? And beyond human concerns, Might there have been astronomical or environmental considerations embedded in the placement and orientation of the towers, alignments that we are only beginning to perceive? One of the most striking features of Clickaman is its integration with the natural landscape. The Broch sits on a thin stretch of land, almost entirely surrounded by water, providing both isolation and visibility. From its upper levels, one can imagine a commanding view across the loch and the surrounding fields, yet certain angles and placements appear almost too precise to be purely practical. Was this intentional, an early form of landscape engineering, or the product of instinctual adaptation to terrain? Some researchers have speculated on alignments with lunar cycles or solar events, though evidence remains circumstantial. Still, the careful interplay of land, stone, and water hints at a sophisticated understanding of the environment, one that modern observers can appreciate but perhaps never fully replicate. Beyond the physical, Clickaman carries whispers of human behavior that are difficult to interpret. Some areas show evidence of rapid construction, suggesting urgency or perhaps adaptation to unforeseen circumstances. Other sections appear deliberately planned over generations, with refinements in technique that imply long-term vision and specialized knowledge. This duality raises questions about the society that built the Broch. Were they responding to immediate threats, or were they engaged in a cultural project whose purposes extended beyond survival? How much of their intent was practical, and how much symbolic or ritualistic? Even today, the site exudes a subtle aura of mystery. Standing on the rocky promontory, one can hear the wind over the loch and feel the pull of centuries of human activity. The Broch's circular silhouette against a gray northern sky is both grounding and uncanny, a reminder of human ingenuity and isolation. It is a structure built to endure, yet its builders have vanished, leaving only stone, shadow, and unanswered questions. The patterns of construction, the placement of ancillary buildings, and the interaction with the surrounding landscape all hint at knowledge that may have been lost, preserved only in the silent testimony of rock and earth. Some interpretations suggest the Broch served as a communal stronghold, others that it was a status symbol or ceremonial center. The truth, likely complex, may encompass all of these possibilities. But there are features that stubbornly defy easy categorization. Certain masonry techniques, peculiar wall angles, and the sheer scale of construction hint at skills that modern builders would find difficult to replicate without sophisticated machinery. Were these techniques developed locally, passed down through generations, or inspired by knowledge from beyond the islands? We may never know. Artifacts, environmental cues, and the layout of Clickaman all point toward a society that combined practicality, social complexity, and a nuanced awareness of their surroundings. And yet, the Broch also embodies the unknown. Its creators' intentions, their rituals, their precise methods, these remain obscured by time. Was the Broch merely a defensive structure? Or was it also a canvas for cultural expression, encoded with meaning we are only beginning to perceive? Could there be knowledge embedded in its walls that eludes even the most careful modern reconstruction? As we trace the curves of its walls, peer into the shadows of ancillary buildings, and listen to the wind over the loch, we are reminded that Clickaman is more than the sum of its stones. It is a dialogue across centuries, a challenge to modern assumptions, and a testament to the ingenuity of a society that thrived in isolation. The questions it poses are not easily answered. How did they move such massive stones with limited tools? What guided the alignment and construction of these towers? And, perhaps most tantalizingly, what might still lie hidden beneath the loch, beneath the soil, or even in the techniques that have been lost to history? Clickaman Broch, like the settlements of Son Fornés and San Cibran de las, is a place where empirical observation meets enduring mystery. It invites us to look beyond what is visible, to consider both the practical and the ineffable, and to wonder at human skill that, even now, seems nearly impossible to replicate. And as the northern light fades across the loch, the questions linger, patient and unmoving, daring us to continue the exploration into the secrets that ancient builders left behind. Leaving the windswept cliffs and lochs of Shetland behind, our journey now turns to the heart of lowland Scotland, where a more ancient and enigmatic presence dominates the horizon. Cairnpapel Hill rises modestly from the surrounding fields, unassuming at first, yet when approached, the subtle contours of terraces, pits, and stone arrangements hint at a carefully orchestrated landscape. From this elevated vantage point, the surrounding Forth Valley stretches outward, a mosaic of forests, rivers, and glimmering fields. It is here, atop this seemingly quiet hill, that the echoes of Neolithic and Bronze Age activity resonate most profoundly, a place where human intent and mystery intertwine. Cairnpapel Hill is classified primarily as a ceremonial and ritual complex, with evidence of continuous use spanning more than 2 millennia. Excavations have revealed concentric circles, burial cairns, stone-built enclosures, and ritual pits, suggesting that the site held enduring spiritual and social significance. Archaeologists have meticulously documented these structures, dating the earliest activity to roughly 3,500 BCE, placing Cairnpapel among Scotland's most important prehistoric sites. Yet, despite decades of study, the precise purposes of many features remain tantalizingly obscure. How did these early communities conceive of space and meaning? What forces guided the placement of cairns, circles, and ceremonial pathways? The summit of the hill presents a particularly striking arrangement: concentric terraces that descend gently, almost imperceptibly, yet with a symmetry that implies deliberate design. Within these terraces, small stone circles and burial markers hint at ritual use, yet their placement sometimes defies immediate interpretation. Some circles are aligned in ways that suggest solar or lunar significance, while others appear to mark lines of sight to distant hills. Could these alignments reflect early astronomical knowledge, a calendrical system, or symbolic connections to surrounding landscapes? Or might they have served more ephemeral purposes, ritual gatherings, initiations, or communal ceremonies lost to memory? The evidence allows for multiple interpretations, yet none can claim certainty. Burial cairns at Cairnpapel add further layers to its enigmatic presence. Many consist of carefully stacked stones, forming compact chambers where cremated or inhumed remains were placed. Some cairns display modifications over time, indicating repeated use or renovation across generations. Yet certain cairns are atypically large or unusually oriented, hinting at symbolic or social intentions beyond mere practicality. Were these monuments markers of status, sanctuaries for revered ancestors, or loti for ritualized interaction with forces no longer understood? Even the simplest stone arrangement seems to carry layers of meaning that modern archaeology can observe but not fully interpret. Intriguingly, the hill is interspersed with pits and post holes whose purposes remain speculative. Some appear to have held timber structures, perhaps ritual installations or ceremonial markers, now vanished. Others suggest offerings or deposits deliberately concealed within the earth. The variety and scale of these features raise profound questions. What knowledge informed their construction, and why were they placed in such precise relation to one another? Did the builders perceive unseen energies or cycles that guided their layout, or were these choices purely symbolic, encoded in ways we cannot decode? Cairnpapel seems to invite contemplation as much as observation. Artifacts recovered from the site provide tantalizing glimpses into its use. Stone tools, pottery fragments, and the occasional ornament hint at practical activity and personal expression. Yet their distribution is irregular, and many areas appear deliberately cleared, as if activity was concentrated in highly specific locations. This patterning suggests that the hill was not merely a settlement or burial site, but a carefully managed ceremonial landscape. Could it be that each stone, each pit, and each circle was part of a complex symbolic system, a code of knowledge, memory, or cosmology that was understood by the community yet remains opaque to us? The broader landscape reinforces this sense of intentionality. From the summit, one can trace distant hills, river valleys, and lowland plains that seem to interact with the site's layout. Some researchers have suggested that lines of sight or topographical features were purposefully incorporated into the design, perhaps serving as markers of celestial events or connections to other sacred sites. Others propose that these alignments reflect social networks or territorial claims, encoded subtly within the architecture of the hill itself. While the evidence is circumstantial, the precision with which Cairnpapel occupies its landscape is undeniable. Even today, Cairnpapel exudes a quiet, persistent presence. Standing among the terraces and cairns, one is struck by the interplay of human effort and natural form, the gentle slope of the hill, the careful arrangement of stones, and the subtle patterns that emerge across the summit. The wind carries the faint impression of past activity, while sunlight highlights edges of terraces and burial markers, momentarily animating features that have long remained silent. It is a place where observation and imagination converge, inviting us to consider not only the practicalities of prehistoric life, but also the spiritual and symbolic dimensions of ancient human experience. Some scholars interpret Cairnpapel primarily as a funerary site, while others emphasize its ceremonial or calendrical aspects. Yet neither explanation fully accounts for the subtle interplay of terraces, circles, pits, and cairns. Certain arrangements appear almost impossible to replicate without careful planning and intimate understanding of both materials and landscape. Did early builders possess a knowledge of geometry, astronomy, or ritual practice that exceeded our current assumptions? Were the terraces and circles designed to guide processions, align with seasonal events, or mediate human interaction with unseen forces? The questions linger, silent but insistent. Perhaps the most compelling aspect of Cairnpapel Hill is its enduring invitation to wonder. It stands as a monument not only to human ingenuity, but also to mystery itself, a landscape deliberately shaped yet partially concealed, designed to be inhabited, observed, and interpreted across generations. What motivated its creators to labor with such precision, to align stones and pits in patterns that defy simple understanding? How much of their knowledge has vanished, preserved only in the contours of earth and the placement of stone? And what might still lie hidden beneath the surface, waiting to reveal new insights to those patient enough to search? Cairnpapel Hill, like Clickaman Broch and Sun Fornays before it, challenges modern assumptions about the past. It asks us to consider both the tangible and the intangible, the observable and the speculative. And as we gaze across its terraces, into the shadows of its cairns, and along the lines of sight stretching across the Scottish lowlands, one cannot help but feel that the mystery is not a deficit of knowledge, but an invitation, an enduring prompt to look closer, think deeper, and remain open to the ingenuity and intention of those who shaped this landscape millennia ago. From the elevated terraces and ritual landscapes of Cairnpapel Hill, our exploration leads us once more northward, this time to the windswept Orkney Islands, where Quoinus Cairn rises quietly from the rolling coastal plains. The site sits amid gentle undulations of grass and rock, overlooked by the distant horizon where sea meets sky. At first glance, Quoinus appears deceptively simple, a low mound of stone, partially eroded, with subtle depressions and alignments barely visible to the untrained eye. Yet, as with the ancient sites we have already encountered, first impressions conceal a depth of human ingenuity and mystery that continues to puzzle modern observers. Quoinus Cairn is classified as a Neolithic chambered cairn, its origins dating roughly to 3000 to 2500 BCE, part of the extensive network of ceremonial and burial monuments scattered across Orkney. Excavations have revealed carefully arranged stones forming a central passage and chamber, suggesting meticulous planning and precise construction techniques. Unlike many other cairns, which appear primarily functional, Coinus displays a combination of architectural sophistication and symbolic intent. The cairn's chamber is small, yet its design conveys an awareness of proportion, acoustics, and perhaps even light, a deliberate shaping of space that elevates the ordinary act of burial into a profound human statement. The central passage, leading into the heart of the cairn, is particularly compelling. Sunlight filters in at specific angles during certain times of the year, illuminating the inner chamber in ways that hint at ceremonial or calendrical significance. Could the builders have possessed a sophisticated understanding of solar cycles, using light to mark seasonal events or spiritual occasions? Or was the effect incidental, an unintentional byproduct of the structure's orientation? Archaeologists note the precision required to align large stones in this manner without modern tools, yet the motivations behind such effort remain tantalizingly elusive. Surrounding the main cairn are traces of ancillary features, smaller stone mounds, depressions, and scattered lithic fragments that suggest the site functioned as more than a simple burial place. These peripheral elements may indicate ritual activity, processional routes, or zones for offerings. The placement of these features relative to the cairn appears intentional, yet deciphering the logic behind them challenges even the most careful analysis. Were they constructed according to a symbolic system now lost to time? Or do they reflect social practices and beliefs that were once immediately intelligible but now remain opaque? The ambiguity invites speculation while grounding it in observable reality. Artifacts recovered at Coinus, though few, are revealing. Pottery shards, polished stone tools, and occasional ornaments hint at human presence and activity beyond the act of interment. Their scarcity, however, raises questions. Was the cairn visited only for ritual occasions, or were objects deliberately removed or preserved in ways that remain invisible today? Some fragments bear marks that suggest careful crafting, hinting at skill and intent, yet their exact role in the community's spiritual or social life is unclear. Were these items functional, symbolic, or both? And why is so little tangible evidence left in what appears to have been an important ceremonial site? The broader landscape amplifies the cairn's mysterious aura. From its mound, one can trace lines of sight to other Neolithic structures scattered across Orkney, forming patterns that suggest both awareness of geography and potential social or spiritual connections between sites. Some researchers propose that Coinus and nearby monuments were deliberately aligned, forming a network that guided movement, ritual, or observation of celestial phenomena. If so, the builders demonstrated not only remarkable planning and engineering skill, but also a conceptual vision that integrated multiple sites into a coherent, though now partially invisible, system. Coinus Cairn also challenges our understanding of construction techniques. The stones are large, irregular, and carefully fitted, often with subtle interlocking arrangements that resist easy interpretation. How did Neolithic builders move, shape, and position these megaliths with the tools available to them? Could there have been knowledge or methods that have since vanished, passed down through generations yet undocumented and unreplicable today? And beyond the practical challenges, why invest such meticulous care in structures that, for the casual observer, appear modest in scale? Perhaps the significance lies not in size but in the precision, symbolism, and the experience of the space itself. Even today, Coinus conveys a quiet, contemplative presence. Standing beside the cairn, one is aware of wind-swept grasses, distant waters, and the rhythm of seasons that the builders must have observed with acute attention. The mound, modest yet deliberate, seems to hum with history. The traces of hands that shaped stone, of footsteps that circled the chamber, of eyes that witnessed sunlight moving across the inner space. It is a place where physical evidence and human imagination converge, encouraging reflection on the lives, beliefs, and knowledge of those who shaped it millennia ago. Interpretations of coyness vary. Some view it primarily as a burial monument, others emphasize its ceremonial or astronomical functions. Yet neither explanation fully accounts for the subtle architectural choices, the precision of alignments, or the careful placement of peripheral features. Could the cairn have served multiple purposes simultaneously? Ritual, memorial, and observational, reflecting a worldview in which the spiritual, social, and environmental were inseparably linked? And if so, what other aspects of human knowledge and practice are encoded in forms that we no longer recognize? Perhaps the most compelling quality of Coyness Cairn is its invitation to wonder. Like Cairn Papal Hill and Clickaman Broch before it, this site embodies the intersection of human ingenuity and enduring mystery. Its stones, chambers, and alignments silently challenge our assumptions about prehistoric skill, planning, and perception. How much remains hidden beneath its soil or within the memory of its construction? How many lessons, practices, or insights have been lost to time, leaving only the quiet testimony of stone and landscape? As the sun dips low over the Orkney horizon, casting long shadows across the cairn and surrounding fields, Coyness remains a monument to both human intent and enigma. It encourages patience, observation, and imagination, reminding us that while some aspects of the past may never be fully understood, the act of inquiry itself bridges millennia. What remains concealed within its stones, and what might future generations discover as they trace the contours, alignments, and hidden stories of this ancient, ineffable site? From the windswept coasts and quiet cairns of Orkney, our journey now leads south, across the Iberian landscape to the rolling plains and rugged hills of southwestern Spain. Here, in the region of Andalusia, the La Torre la Janera megalithic site emerges with subtle yet commanding presence. Scattered across gently undulating terrain, massive stones rise from the earth like echoes of a distant past. Some stand upright, solitary and resolute. Others form elongated alignments, creating patterns that stretch across the horizon. The first impression is one of quiet power, an aura that seems to radiate from the very rocks themselves, as if the landscape remembers the hands that shaped it. La Torre la Janera belongs to a rich tradition of megalithic constructions that span much of prehistoric Europe. The site, believed to date from roughly 3,500 to 2000 BCE, consists of standing stones, dolmens, and alignments whose purposes are still partially hidden from modern understanding. Archaeologists suggest that the arrangement of these megaliths was not random. Certain stones align with distant topographical features, while others seem to mark solar or lunar events, hinting at sophisticated observational knowledge. Yet even as these explanations offer insight, they also underscore a deeper mystery. The precision, effort, and scale of construction remain challenging to fully explain using tools and techniques presumed available to Neolithic communities. Walking among the stones, one notices patterns that suggest both function and symbolism. Dolmens, with their carefully placed capstones and supporting uprights, indicate burial or ritual use. Yet the broader layout of the site raises questions. Why were certain stones set apart, while others form linear arrangements that stretch across the landscape for hundreds of meters? Could these alignments have served as processional pathways, ceremonial boundaries, or markers for astronomical observation? Or might they encode knowledge now lost, information about geography, the heavens, or even cycles of human activity that guided communal life? The answers remain tantalizingly out of reach. Artifacts uncovered in and around La Torre la Llanera offer further intrigue. Fragments of pottery, stone tools, and occasional personal ornaments suggest that these megaliths were integrated into daily life as well as ceremonial practice. Yet the distribution is uneven. Some areas are dense with evidence of human presence, while others appear deliberately cleared or untouched. This pattern raises questions about social organization, ritual significance, or perhaps even taboos surrounding particular stones or alignments. Why invest such meticulous care in construction, and yet leave some spaces conspicuously empty? The human intent behind these choices is elusive, yet it lingers palpably in the air and underfoot. One of the most compelling aspects of La Torre la Llanera is its integration with the surrounding landscape. From certain vantage points, standing stones appear to interact with hills, rivers, and distant horizons in ways that suggest awareness of both natural and cosmic rhythms. Some researchers have proposed that specific stones mark the rising or setting sun at solstices or equinoxes, while others hypothesize connections to lunar cycles. Could these alignments have functioned as a prehistoric observatory, a calendar, or a sacred map of time and space? And if so, how was such knowledge transmitted, preserved, and encoded in structures that endure millennia later? Construction techniques further deepen the mystery. The stones themselves are enormous, requiring substantial labor and coordination to move and erect. Some capstones of dolmens weigh several tons, yet they are balanced atop supports with remarkable precision, forming durable chambers and shelters. Modern experiments attempting to replicate such feats with simple tools have met with limited success, suggesting that these ancient builders possessed specialized knowledge, skills, or techniques that have since been lost. How did Neolithic communities achieve such precision, and what cultural or practical imperatives drove them to such extraordinary effort? Even more puzzling are features that appear neither strictly functional nor purely ornamental. Certain stone arrangements do not seem to correspond to burial, defense, or simple alignment. Could they have served as symbolic markers, territorial claims, or focal points for ceremonies we cannot now comprehend? Were they designed to guide observers through specific paths, to structure ritual experience, or even to encode myth and cosmology in physical form? The possibility of layered meaning, practical, ceremonial, and symbolic, adds a richness to La Torre la Llanera that few sites can match. Artifacts, stonework, and alignments combine to create a landscape that feels both deliberate and alive. Standing among the stones, one becomes acutely aware of the passage of time, the wind brushing against weathered surfaces, the subtle tilt of stones worn by centuries of exposure, the long shadows cast across alignments at different hours. These elements evoke human intention and perception, hinting at a civilization deeply attuned to its surroundings. Yet despite the clarity of physical evidence, the purposes, beliefs, and techniques of the builders remain partly hidden, a puzzle that challenges both imagination and scholarship. Scholars remain divided on interpretation. Some argue for purely funerary and ritual functions, while others emphasize the potential astronomical or social dimensions of the site. The truth may lie in a combination of these factors, intertwined in ways that modern observers can only partially reconstruct. And beyond academic debate, there is the ineffable sense of presence. Standing stones that have endured millennia seem to retain an imprint of human attention, intention, and care, silently bridging the gap between past and present. Perhaps the most compelling aspect of La Torre la Llanera is the way it demands both observation and imagination. It challenges us to consider how early humans interacted with their environment, how they understood the cycles of sun, moon, and season, and how they encoded these observations into enduring stone. Could some knowledge of construction, alignment, or ritual have been deliberately preserved within the stones, awaiting rediscovery by those patient enough to study them? And what remains hidden beneath the earth or in patterns yet to be recognized, lying just beyond the grasp of modern understanding? As the Andalusian sun sets over the horizon, casting long, dramatic shadows across the megaliths, La Torre La Genera continues to pose questions that have no easy answers. Like Coinus Cairn, Cairn Papal Hill, and Clicamin Broch before it, this site stands as a testament to human ingenuity and enduring mystery, a place where empirical observation meets wonder, and where the past continues to challenge our assumptions about what was possible. What secrets remain embedded in the stones, and how much of this knowledge has been lost to time, waiting for the next generation of careful observers to uncover? From the sun-drenched plains of Andalusia, our journey now carries us across the Aegean Sea to the rugged island of Corfu, where the Temple of Caroc quietly occupies a rocky promontory overlooking the shimmering Ionian waters. The first impression is subtle. Low foundations of stone, the remnants of columns long fallen, and the irregular outline of walls hinting at what was once a grand architectural vision. Unlike the towering monuments that dominate other ancient sites, Caroc exudes a quieter, almost austere presence. Yet in its simplicity lies an enigma, a structure carefully conceived but defying easy interpretation, its purpose and peculiarities leaving scholars both intrigued and perplexed. Constructed in the late Archaic period, around the 6th century BCE, the Temple of Caroc is unique among Greek temples for its irregular plan and apparent disregard for conventional architectural norms of the era. Most Doric temples follow strict proportional systems, yet Caroc seems to break the rules. Column spacing varies, the peristyle is asymmetrical, and some dimensions appear inconsistent with classical design logic. Archaeologists have long debated why its builders deviated from standard practices. Was this a product of local tradition, environmental constraints, or an experimental approach to temple design? Or did these irregularities encode symbolic or functional choices that modern observers have yet to decipher? The temple's location adds another layer of intrigue. Positioned on a promontory with sweeping views of the sea, Caroc seems to command attention, yet it is oriented in a way that some researchers suggest may have been deliberately aligned with astronomical or topographical markers. Could its axis have been intended to mark a seasonal solar event, the rising of a particular star, or a ritual horizon? Or was its placement driven primarily by the surrounding landscape's physical characteristics, taking advantage of natural terraces, rock formations, and views that enhanced the temple's presence? The balance between human design and environmental interaction remains subtly perplexing. Excavations at Caroc reveal the skeleton of what was likely a Doric temple, yet much remains missing. Roof elements, decorative sculptural details, and portions of the entablature have vanished, leaving only the foundation stones and a few column drums scattered across the site. These remnants tell a story of deliberate planning and skilled execution, but their irregularity continues to puzzle scholars. How did the builders calculate the positioning of each column without relying solely on the strict proportional rules seen elsewhere in the Greek world? Was there an intention behind this apparent asymmetry, a purpose encoded in the very geometry of stone and space? Artifacts found in and around the temple provide additional context, yet also deepen the mystery. Ceramic fragments, votive offerings, and traces of burnt material suggest ritual activity and religious observance, yet the small number of finds contrasts sharply with the scale of construction. Did Caroc serve a highly specialized ceremonial role, visited only at specific times, or was it part of a broader, now-lost cultic network? And if its use was intermittent or selective, what determined the timing and nature of its rituals? Each discovery raises further questions, inviting both curiosity and reflection. The temple's construction techniques offer another layer of wonder. The stones are carefully cut, yet their irregular arrangement and spacing suggest adaptability, a responsiveness to the terrain rather than strict adherence to a blueprint. Some columns are slightly angled, some foundations offset, implying that the builders may have contended with uneven rock or soil, or perhaps intentionally disrupted uniformity for symbolic or aesthetic effect. Could this represent a local innovation, a unique school of thought, or even knowledge and practices that have been lost over centuries? Modern architects and engineers attempting to replicate Cardoc's irregular Doric proportions find that its subtle asymmetries challenge contemporary assumptions about ancient Greek construction capabilities. Caroc also evokes questions about cultural and religious practice. Unlike larger, more standardized temples, its modest size and irregular plan suggest a localized or specialized function. Was it dedicated to a lesser-known deity, a local hero, or a particular civic purpose that did not require grandeur? Could the temple's deviations from classical norms indicate a deliberate departure from tradition, a reflection of experimental design, or even esoteric knowledge understood only by its builders? The ambiguity of the site encourages careful thought, resisting simplistic explanations while preserving the weight of its silent testimony. Even today, standing among the remnants, one senses the deliberate presence of those who shaped it. The wind sweeping across the promontory carries the memory of human hands arranging stone with precision, of rituals performed in sunlight and shadow, of attention to sight lines, rhythm, and scale. The irregularity itself seems almost communicative, inviting observers to pause, reflect, and question the intentions behind choices that are at once practical, artistic, and enigmatic. What messages were encoded in this asymmetry, and how much of that understanding has been lost with time? Scholars remain divided on Cardoc's purpose and significance. Some emphasize its architectural uniqueness, while others highlight its ritual and environmental context. Yet neither interpretation fully resolves the sense of intentional mystery. The site resists replication, not merely in physical construction, but in understanding the mindset and knowledge that guided its creation. It challenges assumptions about what the ancient Greeks could achieve, and, perhaps more importantly, what they intended to convey beyond mere functionality. Perhaps the most compelling aspect of the Temple of Caroc is its invitation to wonder. Like La Torre La Genera, Coinus Cairn, and Cairn Papal Hill before it, this site embodies the intersection of human skill, environmental awareness, and enduring mystery. It is a structure that speaks to both tangible craftsmanship and intangible intent. A monument that quietly challenges observers to look beyond form and function. How much of its meaning has been lost to time, and what subtle knowledge or ritual practices are embedded within its irregular stones. And as we trace the contours of its foundations, alignments, and subtle deviations, one cannot help but wonder, what secrets remain concealed, waiting for patient study, reflection, and perhaps revelation in the future? From the rocky promontories of Corfu and the irregular Doric stones of Caroc, our exploration now turns northward once more, across the landscapes of the western Black Sea, to the ancient settlement of Histria, on the edge of what was once a marshy coastline. Here, among the traces of Neolithic and later habitation, stands an object that has puzzled archaeologists for decades: the Histria Neolithic Pole. Rising subtly from the surrounding earth, it is simple in form, a long, upright wooden shaft, but its presence carries a weight far beyond its modest appearance. In the shifting light of early morning, it seems to hum with history, a solitary sentinel bridging the millennia between human intention and our modern gaze. The history of Pole dates back to the late Neolithic, approximately 5,000 to 4,500 BCE, within a context of early agricultural and ritual activity along the coastal wetlands. Its original function remains unclear, yet it is firmly embedded within the settlement's central space, suggesting deliberate placement. Archaeologists note that it is not a mere fence post or marker. The shaft is unusually straight, carefully stripped of bark, and shows signs of repeated handling or maintenance. How did Neolithic communities shape and erect such a pole with the tools available at the time? What purpose warranted such attention to detail? And why has this seemingly ordinary object commanded so much fascination over the centuries? The setting of the pole adds to its enigmatic character. History as landscape, once a series of lagoons, marshes, and fertile plains, would have shaped both daily life and spiritual imagination. The pole stands near what may have been pathways, hearths, and communal spaces, suggesting it played a central role in social or ritual activity. Could it have served as a totem, a marker of celestial events, or a focal point for gatherings that combined the practical and the sacred? Its alignment, slightly off the cardinal directions, hints at intention, yet resists straightforward interpretation. Was it designed to catch the light of solstices, to point toward distant hills or water channels, or to guide the movement of people within the settlement? Analysis of the pole's construction deepens the mystery. The wood, preserved through waterlogged soil, shows signs of careful selection and shaping. It is remarkably straight, suggesting advanced understanding of material properties. Yet there are no clear indications of metal tools being used, implying that early Neolithic communities achieved this precision with stone implements alone. How much skill, patience, and knowledge of natural materials did this process require? And if the technical challenges were so significant, what drove these communities to invest effort in an object whose purpose is still obscure to us? Archaeological surveys have uncovered traces around the pole that hint at repeated use or modification. Stones arranged in circles or small clusters, post holes nearby, and occasional deposits of pottery fragments suggest that the pole may have been integrated into ritualized activity. Could these arrangements have marked boundaries, acted as a focal point for seasonal or communal ceremonies, or even encoded social hierarchies or cosmological understanding? Each observation offers plausible explanations, yet none resolves the sense of deliberate mystery that the pole radiates. One of the most compelling aspects of the Histria Neolithic pole is its relationship to water and the surrounding landscape. The settlement was once a dynamic, shifting environment, with tides, marshes, and channels shaping human activity. The pole's position may reflect an intimate understanding of these environmental rhythms. Could it have functioned as a marker of flooding cycles, agricultural timing, or tidal observation? Some researchers propose that poles such as this may have had a dual purpose, both practical, guiding communal life, and symbolic, anchoring the spiritual imagination of early inhabitants in a tangible vertical form. Even small details of the pole challenge our modern understanding. Its base is carefully seated, its surface smoothed, and traces suggest it may have been moved, replaced, or re-erected over time. Such maintenance implies a continuity of use, a significance that persisted across generations. Why would an object be so meticulously cared for, yet leave no inscriptions or other direct indicators of its function? Could the meaning have been embodied in ritual practice, oral tradition, or subtle environmental interaction, all of which vanished with the passage of time? Standing before the pole today, one cannot help but sense its silent testimony. The wind moves through surrounding reeds, the distant water glints in sunlight, and the pole itself stands firm, a human creation that has endured millennia. It invites reflection on the ingenuity, intention, and imagination of Neolithic communities, who shaped both landscape and object in ways that continue to puzzle us. How did they perceive the world? How much knowledge is embedded in this simple wooden shaft, encoded in placement, orientation, and material selection? And how much of that knowledge remains inaccessible, lost to centuries of change? Some scholars interpret the pole as primarily ceremonial, others as a practical marker or environmental guide. Yet neither interpretation fully captures the sense of presence and deliberation that the object conveys. Its simplicity is deceptive. The labor, intention, and knowledge required to produce and maintain it are profound. In this way, the Histria Neolithic pole resonates with other enigmatic structures we have explored, from La Torre la Genera's megaliths to Cardacchi's irregular temple, reminding us that human ingenuity and ritual imagination often exceed our ability to fully comprehend or replicate. Perhaps the most compelling aspect of the pole is its invitation to wonder. Like the sites we have traversed before, it challenges assumptions about technological and conceptual limits in the Neolithic world. It is an object that resists easy classification, yet communicates a persistent human presence and intention. How much of its purpose remains hidden, waiting for careful observation, analysis, or insight? And as we gaze upon this solitary shaft, standing against the horizon of ancient marshes and distant waters, one cannot help but reflect on the mysteries that endure in the landscapes shaped by human hands, where knowledge, ritual, and imagination intersect in ways that still elude us today. From the marshy plains of Histria and the solitary wooden shaft of the Neolithic pole, our journey now carries us northward once more, to the remote and wind-swept archipelago of Orkney. Here, on the tiny island of Holm of Papa, lies a structure that whispers across millennia, the Holm of Papa Chambered Cairn. At first glance, the cairn seems modest, a low mound of carefully placed stones blending seamlessly into the rocky coastal landscape. Yet even in this quiet form, it exudes an unmistakable presence, a sense of deliberate construction, of intention embedded in stone that invites closer observation and thoughtful reflection. The cairn is classified as a Neolithic chambered tomb, part of Orkney's rich legacy of ceremonial architecture, dating roughly between 3500 and 3000 BCE. Its central chamber, constructed with carefully stacked slabs, was designed to house the remains of the dead, yet its purpose seems to extend beyond mere interment. Surrounding the main structure are ancillary features, low walls, curbstones, and subtle depressions that hint at processional pathways or ritualized activity. From the first steps toward the cairn, it is clear that this was a site of significance, carefully situated within a landscape both visible and yet isolated, a place meant to endure. The design of Holm of Papa is both simple and sophisticated. The central chamber is accessed through a narrow passage, deliberately constructed with large vertical slabs that support massive lintels. The precision of this construction is remarkable. Each stone is placed with attention to balance and stability, creating a structure that has survived millennia of harsh weather, wind, and salt spray from the surrounding sea. How did Neolithic builders achieve such durability with rudimentary tools? What knowledge of stone properties, leverage, and weight distribution guided them, and why invest so much effort in a monument whose primary purpose was long gone even to contemporary generations? Its location is equally intriguing. Holm of Papa is small, almost forgotten amid the islands, yet the cairn occupies the highest accessible point, offering sweeping views of the surrounding waters. Could this placement have been symbolic, a connection between the living, the dead, and the vast seascape beyond? Might the cairn have functioned as both a tomb and a marker, an anchor within a spiritual or social landscape, visible to other communities and travelers across the waters? The duality of function, practical and symbolic, seems to echo through the careful layout of the stones. Excavations of the cairn reveal traces of cremated remains, stone tools, and fragments of pottery, offering glimpses into the lives and deaths of its builders. Yet these artifacts are sparse, suggesting the site may have been used selectively, perhaps reserved for prominent individuals or specific ceremonial occasions. Could this reflect a social hierarchy encoded in stone, or a ritual practice whose meaning has vanished over time? And beyond the practical evidence, one cannot help but sense the intangible, the human presence that lingers in the careful alignment of slabs, the deliberate shaping of space, and the enduring solidity of the structure itself. Construction techniques deepen the mystery further. The stones are enormous, irregular, yet meticulously fitted to form stable walls and passages. Replicating such a structure today without modern machinery would challenge even the most experienced stonemasons. How did Neolithic communities manage these heavy slabs, some weighing several tons with only stone and wood tools? Was there knowledge of engineering principles that has since been lost, passed orally or experientially through generations, yet vanished with the eventual abandonment of the site? The cairn's very existence challenges assumptions about prehistoric skill, foresight, and ingenuity. Even the cairn's subtle irregularities provoke questions. Certain slabs are slightly angled, some alignments seem intentional, but do not follow a clear geometric pattern, and some peripheral stones appear almost deliberately out of place. Could these choices encode symbolic meaning, guide ritual behavior, or mark environmental or astronomical events? Perhaps the builders incorporated knowledge of seasonal light, sightlines to distant islands, or local topography in ways that modern observers can only speculate upon. The site seems to invite inquiry, a careful study of both its form and its interaction with the surrounding environment. The surrounding landscape reinforces this sense of intentionality. From the cairn, one can trace subtle lines of sight to other Neolithic monuments across the Orkney Islands, suggesting a network of ritual, social, or territorial connections. Did these monuments function as points within a symbolic map, guiding movement, signaling communal presence, or mediating interaction with the natural and spiritual world? The possibility lingers that each cairn, each stone, and each alignment carried layers of knowledge that we are only beginning to perceive, encoded in form rather than text. Standing before Holm of Papa today, one cannot help but feel the quiet gravity of human intention. The cairn exudes both permanence and mystery, a monument to lives, rituals, and knowledge that have long since passed. The wind whistles across the small island, the waves lap at distant shores, and yet the cairn remains steadfast, as if holding the memory of the people who erected it. What did they see when they built it? And what did it mean to them to shape stone in a landscape so remote and enduring? Scholars have offered interpretations, primarily funerary, occasionally ritualistic, but none fully explain the precision, durability, and placement of the structure. Was Holm of Papa solely a tomb, or did it also serve as a ceremonial focal point, a social marker, or even an astronomical guide? And if so, how much knowledge has been lost, hidden not in artifacts but in the very arrangement of stones, the orientation of passages, and the subtle interaction between monument and landscape? Perhaps the most compelling aspect of Holm of Papa is the way it silently demands attention and reflection. Like the Histria Neolithic Pole, the Temple of Caradoc, and La Torre la Honera before it, the cairn invites us to consider the intersection of human skill, environmental awareness, and cultural imagination. Its presence challenges assumptions about what prehistoric communities were capable of, and its unanswered questions remind us that some knowledge, encoded in stone and landscape, endures long after the people themselves have vanished. What secrets remain embedded in its slabs, its passages, and its relationship to the wider Orkney landscape? And what might future generations discover if they, too, are patient enough to listen to the stories the stones quietly tell? From the windswept shores of Orkney and the enduring stones of Holm of Papa, our journey returns to the northern Scottish mainland, to the rugged terrain of Sutherland, where Dun Dornagil Broch rises quietly from a rocky promontory. At first glance, it is a modest ruin. Weathered stone walls encircle a circular core, partially collapsed, yet defying the passage of centuries. Standing among its remnants, one senses not only human craftsmanship, but an intentionality that hints at purpose, protection, and perhaps even a knowledge that has eluded historians and archaeologists alike. The Broch is more than a ruin. It is a statement, both practical and enigmatic, set against a landscape of rolling hills and distant lochs. Dun Dornagil belongs to the Iron Age tradition of brochs, circular stone towers unique to Scotland, thought to have been constructed between 500 BCE and 100 CE. These structures are remarkable for their dry stone construction, often featuring double walls, internal galleries, and stairways embedded within their massive thickness. The architectural ambition of brochs is undeniable, yet the reasons for their existence continue to provoke debate. Were they primarily defensive, designed to protect communities in a time of conflict? Were they symbols of status and authority, asserting control over land and people? Or did they serve multiple purposes simultaneously, blending habitation, fortification, and ceremonial display into a single, cohesive structure? Dun Dornagil embodies all these questions, standing as a silent witness to choices made millennia ago. The Broch's setting is immediately striking. Perched upon a small rocky knoll, it overlooks fertile valleys, winding streams, and the distant shimmer of the Atlantic horizon. Its position commands attention, both from those who might approach and from the community it overlooks. Such placement suggests a sophisticated understanding of terrain, visibility, and perhaps even social signaling. Could the builders have intended it to be seen from afar, a landmark asserting identity, power, or protection? Or was its location selected primarily for strategic defense, a practical response to the environmental and social conditions of Iron Age Scotland? Perhaps the truth lies somewhere in between. The construction itself continues to fascinate. The walls are thick, carefully aligned, and built without mortar, yet remain remarkably stable despite centuries of exposure to wind, rain, and frost. Moving and shaping stones of this size using Iron Age tools would have required coordination, planning, and deep knowledge of material properties. Modern experiments in dry stone building suggest that replicating a broch like Dun Dornagil without mechanized assistance is possible, but extremely labor-intensive. How did these communities organize labor, and what cultural or practical imperatives drove them to create structures that were simultaneously functional, monumental, and enduring? Within the broch, subtle architectural features invite speculation. The internal space is compact, with evidence of hearths, partitions, and narrow galleries hidden within the walls. Some researchers propose that these galleries served defensive purposes, providing elevated positions or protected storage, while others suggest they may have had symbolic or ceremonial significance. Were these passages practical solutions, aesthetic choices, or part of a more complex cultural system whose rules we can only guess at? The interplay of light, shadow, and enclosed space creates an almost otherworldly atmosphere, hinting that the experience of the broch may have been as important as its utility. Artifacts recovered from Dun Dornagil provide additional insight, but also deepen the mystery. Fragments of pottery, stone tools, and traces of metalwork indicate domestic activity, yet the site's defensive capabilities suggest preparation for conflict or display of strength. How did inhabitants balance daily life with the demands of security and social signaling? And if brochs were used intermittently or selectively, what dictated patterns of occupancy and ritual? Each object, each architectural choice, adds a layer to a puzzle that remains only partially deciphered. The The surrounding landscape reinforces the broch's significance. Lines of sight connect Dundornagill to other settlements, potential agricultural land, and natural resources, suggesting deliberate integration with broader human activity. Could the Broch have functioned as part of a network, communicating presence, control, or warning across the highlands? Was its position also symbolic, establishing relationships with the natural features of the land, the horizon, or the cycles of sun and moon? The interplay between structure and environment seems intentional, yet the precise logic remains elusive. Even subtle irregularities in the structure provoke thought. Some wall segments are slightly offset. Certain galleries deviate from perfect symmetry. Are these the result of environmental constraints, practical adjustments, or deliberate design choices? Could they reflect knowledge of structural behavior, ritual significance, or symbolic encoding of information now lost to time? Dundornagill, like the other sites we have explored, seems to carry layers of meaning, blending the practical, the social, and the symbolic into a form that challenges modern understanding. Standing amid the ruins today, one feels the weight of history and human intention. The wind sweeps across the broch, carrying the faint memory of footsteps, labor, and life long past. Sunlight strikes the circular walls, illuminating shadows that hint at the galleries and chambers hidden within. Here, the physical evidence meets imagination. The structure resists replication, not only because of its technical demands, but because its design speaks to priorities, knowledge, and social practices that we can only partially comprehend. Scholars continue to debate the Broch's function, defense, status, ritual, habitation, but no single explanation fully accounts for its complexity. Dundornagill challenges assumptions about Iron Age skill, knowledge, and intention. It is a structure that demands careful study, reflection, and patience, much like Holm of Papa, the Histria Pole, or the Temple of Caradoc. How much of its purpose is encoded in stone, and how much lies in the human imagination that once animated it? And as we observe the Broch today, surrounded by highland winds and distant seas, one cannot help but wonder what secrets remain concealed within its walls, waiting for patient investigation to reveal them. From the rugged hills and brooding stone of northern Scotland, our exploration now carries us southward across the Mediterranean to the sparkling waters off the coast of Laconia in Greece, where one of the oldest submerged cities in the world lies hidden beneath the waves, Pavlopetri. At first glance, the sea appears calm, its gentle ripples masking the secret of a city frozen in time beneath the shallow waters. Dive just below the surface, and the outline of streets, walls, and buildings emerges, an underwater tapestry of human ambition, community, and mystery, preserved for more than 5 millennia. The site is simultaneously awe-inspiring and disorienting, a tangible glimpse of a world suspended between life and memory. Pavlopetri dates back to at least 2800 BCE, making it one of the earliest known urban settlements in Europe. Unlike other ancient cities that survive through their ruins on land, Pavlopetri rests beneath a shallow bay, submerged perhaps by seismic activity, rising sea levels, or gradual coastal subsidence. The city's layout is astonishingly sophisticated. Stone foundations trace the contours of organized streets, rectangular buildings, and courtyards. Doorways and walls are clearly defined, hinting at a society with both architectural knowledge and social organization. For a civilization existing in the late Neolithic to early Bronze Age, such urban planning is remarkable, raising profound questions about technological skill, labor coordination, and civic foresight in a period often assumed to be simple or decentralized. Archaeologists have mapped the submerged streets and buildings with precision, revealing a complexity that challenges modern expectations. Some structures appear residential, while others may have served commercial, ritual, or communal purposes. Yet, despite the clarity of stone outlines, so much remains uncertain. How were these buildings roofed or constructed above ground? What daily activities unfolded within these now silent walls? And, most intriguingly, how did a thriving settlement come to rest beneath the waves, perfectly preserved yet entirely inaccessible without careful diving and sonar technology? Artifacts recovered from Pavlopetri deepen the intrigue. Pottery fragments, stone tools, grinding stones, and even burial urns suggest a community that balanced domestic life, trade, and ritual. The quality and variety of ceramics indicate connections with other Aegean cultures, implying an early network of communication, commerce, or cultural exchange. Some objects, however, are puzzling, bearing marks or designs whose function or meaning is difficult to interpret. Were they everyday tools, symbolic tokens, or objects tied to beliefs that we cannot fully reconstruct? The evidence is tantalizing, hinting at knowledge, practice, and artistry now veiled by time and water. The submersion itself adds a profound layer of mystery. Pavlopetri did not vanish overnight, yet the exact sequence of its descent into the sea remains contested. Was it a gradual encroachment of coastal waters, a sudden seismic event, or a combination of environmental pressures that led to its preservation beneath silt and sediment? Whatever the cause, the result is extraordinary. Unlike other ancient settlements that have been eroded, looted, or rebuilt, Pavlopetri rests in situ, its streets and foundations intact, frozen as if waiting for observers to decode its story. How much did its builders know of their vulnerability to natural forces, and did they leave behind any markers, warnings, or intentional planning to mitigate environmental risks? The underwater landscape also preserves patterns that hint at social structure. Buildings vary in size and orientation, suggesting distinctions of function or status. Street widths appear deliberate, accommodating pedestrian and perhaps cart traffic. Courtyards and communal spaces suggest areas for gathering, trade, or ritual. Could this city, submerged for thousands of years, reflect not only a sophisticated approach to construction and urban planning, but also a nuanced understanding of human social organization? And if so, what cultural or spiritual priorities guided these early urban planners, shaping a settlement that has endured both in memory and in waterlogged stone? Construction techniques further provoke questions. The stones used in foundations are cut with precision, yet the tools of the period were limited to stone, bone, and early copper implements. How did these early builders achieve such durability, stability, and uniformity in a settlement intended to last for generations? And how much knowledge of hydrology, soil, and material strength did they possess, anticipating challenges that modern engineers would still consider significant today? Pavlopetri suggests a level of technical skill and environmental awareness that is difficult to replicate even in contemporary experimental archaeology. Standing, or rather, imagining standing, within the submerged streets, one senses a city frozen in liminal space. Waves ripple across stone foundations. Sunlight filters through shallow water, illuminating patterns of walls and doorways long abandoned. Pavlopetri exists in two realms at once, a tangible artifact of human endeavor and an ethereal vision of loss, continuity, and the passage of time. Its very preservation defies replication, reminding us that the past is both fragile and enduring, contingent on forces both human and natural. Scholars continue to debate the city's function, layout, and ultimate fate, yet no explanation fully resolves its mysteries. Was it primarily residential, or did commerce, ritual, and governance dominate its organization? Could certain structures have served purposes now invisible to us? Astronomical observation, social regulation, or sacred rites? And how did its inhabitants relate to a coastline and environment that would eventually claim their city? The answers, like the stones beneath the waves, are obscured but not beyond imagination. Perhaps the most compelling aspect of Pavlopetri is the way it challenges assumptions about ancient capability. Like Dun Dornigel Broch, Holm of Papa, and Histria's Neolithic Pole, the city embodies ingenuity, organization, and adaptation that seem impossible to replicate with the tools and knowledge presumed available to its builders. It invites reflection on human skill, resilience, and the ways knowledge can be encoded not in text, but in streets, foundations, and urban patterns preserved through time. What secrets lie hidden beneath layers of silt, in corners of courtyards, or along submerged streets that remain unexcavated? And as modern technology allows us glimpses into this sunken world, we are left to wonder how much more of the past remains locked underwater, waiting for patient observation to bring it back into human consciousness. From the sunken streets of Pavlopetri, where human ingenuity lies preserved beneath waves, our journey moves westward across the Mediterranean to the island of Minorca, a landscape marked by rolling hills, limestone plains, and an enduring sense of the past. Here, in the rural hinterlands near Torello, stands one of the island's most enigmatic prehistoric monuments, the Talayot of Torello. At first glance, it is deceptively simple. A massive stone tower rising from the earth, cylindrical in form, weathered by centuries of wind, rain, and human presence. Yet within this quiet monolith lies a depth of mystery, a testimony to the skill, purpose, and perhaps lost knowledge of a people who lived more than 3,000 years ago. Talayots, such as this one, are unique to the Balearic Islands, marking the Talayotic culture that flourished in Minorca and Majorca during the Late Bronze and Early Iron Ages, roughly 1000 to 300 BCE. The Torello structure is constructed from large limestone blocks, stacked without mortar, forming a circular tower that dominates the surrounding landscape. Its sheer scale and precision suggest careful planning and architectural understanding, yet many aspects remain unexplained. Why did these communities invest such immense labor into a tower that offers neither obvious defense nor readily apparent function? Could it have served multiple roles, ritual, social, territorial, or perhaps symbolic, in ways we can only begin to speculate upon? The site's location is telling. Perched on gently rising terrain, the Talayot commands views of surrounding fields, pathways, and distant hills, yet it is isolated enough to create a sense of deliberate separation. From this vantage point, observers might have surveyed the landscape, observed approaching travelers, or conducted ceremonies in a space removed from daily activity. Could its prominence have been intended to communicate social authority, spiritual significance, or a combination of both? And if its function was primarily symbolic, what knowledge or cultural values were encoded in the careful placement of stones and its orientation toward the surrounding environment? The construction techniques reveal both ingenuity and skill. Each limestone block is carefully shaped and positioned to create a stable, nearly cylindrical tower. Some stones bear subtle smoothing, others show evidence of splitting and dressing, suggesting knowledge of stone behavior and material properties. Modern attempts to replicate such a structure using only primitive tools demonstrate just how labor-intensive the process must have been. How did Talayotic builders achieve such balance, stability, and precision without metal tools or modern lifting equipment? And what cultural imperatives drove communities to expend this energy in a single structure whose original purpose is not entirely clear to us today? Within the tower and surrounding complex, subtle features hint at possible internal use or ritualized activity. Certain talayots include small chambers or niches, occasionally aligned with openings that might catch the light of the rising or setting sun. Could these have been functional spaces, storage, observation posts, or even dwellings? Or were they symbolic constructs, designed to channel attention, mark sacred moments, or facilitate ceremonies? The ambiguity is deliberate, leaving modern observers to piece together intention from fragments of form, orientation, and spatial relationship. The Talayot's relationship to surrounding monuments is equally compelling. Nearby, smaller stone structures, walls, dwellings, and other Talayots form an intricate network of human activity, hinting at a settlement organized according to social, ritual, or defensive principles. The positioning of Torello relative to these features suggests planning on a scale beyond individual towers, hinting at a collective understanding of space, hierarchy, and purpose. Was it a central point within a territorial network, a ceremonial hub, or a marker of collective memory? Perhaps it was all of these at once, its meaning shifting over time as the society around it evolved. Artifacts recovered in and around Talayots are sparse but revealing. Fragments of pottery, tools, and occasional personal ornaments suggest domestic activity alongside ritual function, yet their distribution is irregular. Certain areas near the tower are almost entirely devoid of material evidence, implying selective or restricted use. Could these omissions indicate sacred spaces, places reserved for leaders, or areas where knowledge was encoded in practice rather than object? The absence is as provocative as the presence, inviting questions about what is visible, what is hidden, and what was deliberately obscured by those who built and used the structure. One of the most enigmatic aspects of the Talayotic towers is their resilience. Despite centuries of weather, human activity, and natural erosion, the Torello Talayot stands largely intact, a testament to both design and construction skill. How did the builders anticipate the forces of nature that would act on their work for millennia? Was their knowledge empirical, gained through careful observation over generations, or guided by principles now lost to time? And if it was partially symbolic or ritual in nature, how much of the tower's significance depended on its survival, its visibility, endurance, and permanence, as a marker across generations? The Talayot also challenges modern assumptions about prehistoric societies. It is neither a palace nor a fortress in the conventional sense, yet it embodies complex planning, communal effort, and knowledge of materials, site, and landscape. Could the construction of a single tower like Torello have required coordination across multiple families, clans, or communities? And if so, what does that imply about social organization, cultural priorities, or even leadership in Talayotic society? The monument is at once practical, symbolic, and enigmatic, defying singular categorization. Standing before the Talayot today, the scale and simplicity are striking. The stones, large and enduring, create a rhythm that resonates with both permanence and mystery. The surrounding landscape stretches out undisturbed in many ways, yet shaped by millennia of human interaction. Sunlight and shadow play across the tower's surface, hinting at forms, angles, and alignments that may have guided ancient eyes in ways we cannot fully reconstruct. How did the builders perceive the interaction of light, stone, and horizon? What knowledge was embedded in the tower itself, waiting for those who could read it in its spatial and material language? Scholars continue to debate the purpose and meaning of Talayotic towers like Torello. Defense, ritual, territorial marking, astronomical alignment, each explanation has merit, yet none fully captures the complexity, durability, and deliberate irregularities of construction. And perhaps this ambiguity was intentional, a monument designed to endure both physically and conceptually, carrying multiple layers of meaning that could shift according to circumstance, observer, or ritual. How much of its function was practical, how much symbolic, and how much we will never fully understand remains an open question. Perhaps the most compelling feature of the Talayot of Torello is the way it invites reflection. Like Pavlopetri, Dun Dornigil, Holm of Papa, and the History of Pol, It embodies a combination of human ingenuity, environmental awareness, and mystery that seems impossible to replicate. The tower is at once tangible and elusive, a monument to the capacity of prehistoric societies to shape both material and conceptual landscapes. What secrets remain encoded in the stones, the alignments, or the surrounding space? And as we study, reflect, and imagine, one cannot help but wonder what other knowledge, skill, and intention has been lost to time, waiting for those patient enough to observe, measure, and ponder. From the windswept plains of Minorca and the enduring talayot of Torelló, our journey now moves eastward, across the Mediterranean and into the rugged mountains of southeastern Anatolia, where the summit of Mount Nemrut rises abruptly from the landscape. Here, above 2,000 meters in altitude, the horizon is dominated by colossal stone heads and seated figures that seem to stare out over the valleys below. The scale is breathtaking. Statues that tower above the human eye, each carved with careful attention to form, expression, and placement. The mountain itself is austere, the air thin, the winds biting, yet these silent sentinels persist, perched in ceremonial terraces as if awaiting the gaze of those who dare to approach. Mount Nemrut's monumental assemblage dates to the 1st century BCE, constructed under the direction of King Antiochus I of Commagene. The site is a fusion of Persian, Hellenistic, and local Anatolian styles, blending colossal statuary with intricate tumulus architecture. At its heart lies a massive burial mound, flanked by terraces lined with figures representing gods, kings, and mythical beings. The colossal heads, many now toppled and fragmented, reveal finely carved features, the regal bearing of a seated monarch, the enigmatic smile of a deity, the precise attention to eyes, hair, and beard. How was it possible, in such a remote and elevated location, to transport, carve, and assemble stones of such immense size? What motivated a ruler to conceive of a monument that could rival the scale of the pyramids, yet so deliberately remote? The site's location is striking not merely for its altitude, but for its commanding visibility. From the terraces, one can gaze across vast plains, distant mountains, and the valleys that connect the ancient world of Anatolia. Scholars have speculated that the placement was both symbolic and strategic. The mountain serves as a visual anchor, a marker of power visible across miles, while also creating a sacred space removed from the mundane world below. Could the elevation itself have been intended to bring the king closer to the divine? To elevate both ruler and observer into a liminal space where human and celestial realms intersect? Or was it equally practical, a location chosen to ensure the monument's survival and isolation from earthly threats? The construction techniques add another layer of fascination. Each statue is composed of massive blocks, often carved in situ or transported from nearby quarries. The logistics alone, moving multi-ton stones up steep rocky inclines without modern machinery, pose questions about the ingenuity, organization, and knowledge of the builders. How did workers coordinate this feat, ensuring precision in alignment, scale, and orientation? Some statues are seated, others toppled, yet the original positioning hints at a careful plan, one in which sightlines, symmetry, and symbolic intent were carefully considered. Could there have been methods, lost to time, for calculating weight, balance, and placement that surpass what modern engineers might assume possible for a culture of this era? The iconography itself is rich and enigmatic. Figures represent a pantheon of Greco-Persian gods, alongside the figure of Antiochus himself, suggesting a deliberate blending of cultures and belief systems. Inscriptions provide clues to titles, genealogy, and religious intentions, yet they leave gaps, ambiguities, and tantalizing mysteries. Why was this particular combination of deities chosen? How did the king envision his relationship with them, and what messages were meant for future observers? Was the site primarily funerary, ceremonial, or propagandistic, or did it encompass all three roles in a complex interplay that we are only beginning to appreciate? The toppled heads themselves provoke reflection. Separated from their bodies, some weigh several tons and rest scattered along terraces, their features still identifiable, their gaze fixed eternally outward. The act of decapitation and displacement may have been natural, caused by seismic activity, frost, or erosion, but it also invites speculation about symbolism. Did the original arrangement intend for the gaze of the gods and king to dominate the landscape in a particular pattern, an alignment that conveyed cosmic or political meaning? How much of the site's power, authority, and ritual resonance depended on the precise orientation of these colossal forms, now disrupted by time? Even the tumulus, the massive mound at the heart of the site, reflects meticulous planning. Rising above the terraces, it is composed of countless stones forming a conical shape, sheltering the tomb of Antiochus, while simultaneously serving as a ceremonial focal point. Was the mound intended to mirror natural mountains, linking earthly topography with divine authority? Did its size, shape, and centrality encode astronomical or ritual knowledge, marking solar or lunar events in ways we can only hypothesize? The intersection of monumentality, geometry, and symbolism suggests a sophisticated understanding of form, space, and perception that continues to elude full explanation. Artifacts recovered around the terraces and adjacent sites, fragments of statues, inscriptions, and offerings, provide further context, yet they raise more questions than they answer. Some items are functional, others clearly ceremonial, yet few explain the precise reasoning behind scale, alignment, and artistic choices. Could Antiochus have had access to knowledge or craftsmen whose methods have been lost? Were certain design decisions practical, ceremonial, symbolic, or some combination of all three? The answers remain elusive, preserved only in stone, orientation, and the enduring mystery of the mountain itself. Standing today on Mount Nemrut, among the colossal heads, one feels both awe and disquiet. The wind sweeps across terraces, carrying fragments of inscriptions, the echoes of hammering, and centuries of human presence. Sunlight illuminates the carved faces at different angles, shifting perception, highlighting features, and creating a dynamic, almost living quality in these stone giants. The site embodies human ambition, artistry, and the quest to leave an enduring mark. Yet it also challenges our understanding of what ancient civilizations could achieve in remote and difficult landscapes. Scholars continue to debate the purpose, methods, and meaning of Mount Nemrut, offering interpretations ranging from funerary and religious to symbolic and political. Yet, no explanation fully accounts for the scale, sophistication, and ingenuity of the site, nor for the deliberate blending of cultural motifs. Like Taliot of Toroyot, Pavlopetri, or Dun Dornigel, Mount Nemrut resists replication. Its construction required not just physical skill, but conceptual vision, knowledge of materials, awareness of landscape, and perhaps even symbolic foresight that modern observers struggle to comprehend. Perhaps the most compelling aspect of Mount Nemrut is its invitation to contemplation. The statues, the tumulus, the terraces, and the panoramic landscape together form a monument that exists at the intersection of human labor, spiritual imagination, and environmental mastery. What secrets remain embedded in the positioning of stones, the gaze of colossal figures, or the alignment of terraces with sun and horizon? How much knowledge was lost with the passing of centuries, and how much survives silently in the mountain itself? And as we stand in their shadow, we are reminded that human creativity, ambition, and mystery can endure far longer than the lives of those who first shaped the world around them. From the towering summits of Mount Nemrut, where colossal stone heads gaze eternally over the Anatolian plains, Our journey now carries us across continents and oceans to the highlands of Peru, where the arid plains of the southern Andes conceal a city of extraordinary scale and precision, Picalocta. Nestled on a plateau above the valley floor, the site stretches for over 50 hectares, its stone walls, streets, and temple complexes forming a labyrinth of structures that reveal a society capable of remarkable organization and vision. At the heart of this sprawling settlement lie the Wari temples, monumental constructions that hint at both religious devotion and an advanced understanding of architecture, urban planning, and ceremonial practice. Picalocta flourished between the 7th and 10th centuries CE under the Wari civilization, a precursor to the more widely known Inca. Unlike other Andean settlements, the Wari carefully planned their cities, often with rectilinear street grids, centralized plazas, and imposing structures aligned with both human and natural features. The temples of Picalocta exemplify this approach. Massive stone platforms rise above surrounding courtyards, stairways lead to elevated ceremonial spaces, and walls, constructed with finely cut and fitted stones, create chambers whose purpose is only partially understood. How did the Wari achieve such precision in stonework, particularly in a region prone to seismic activity without the benefit of mortar in many structures? And what cultural imperatives drove them to erect temples of such scale and complexity, seemingly designed to inspire awe and enforce social cohesion simultaneously? The temple's architecture is striking. Large rectangular platforms, often flanked by smaller subsidiary rooms or courtyards, suggest a hierarchy of use, perhaps reflecting different levels of ritual access or function. Certain walls are aligned along cardinal directions, while some entrances frame distant mountain peaks or valleys, hinting at a symbolic or cosmological dimension. Could these alignments have been deliberate, encoding celestial events, seasonal changes, or ancestral reverence into the very geometry of stone? The combination of practicality and symbolism creates a layered mystery. These are functional spaces designed for gatherings, yet the precision, orientation, and scale suggest an additional, more profound purpose. Construction methods further deepen the intrigue. Stones are cut with remarkable uniformity, carefully shaped to fit together without mortar, and arranged to withstand both the weight of superstructures and the shifting earth of an earthquake-prone region. Modern studies confirm that replicating these techniques without extensive knowledge, coordination, and labor is exceedingly difficult. Did the Wari possess specialized knowledge of structural dynamics that has since been lost? How did they transport and position massive stone blocks across uneven terrain? And how much labor, organization, and social cooperation did it take to construct a single temple complex? The physical evidence hints at capabilities that challenge conventional assumptions about pre-Columbian engineering. Equally compelling is the integration of the temples within the larger city. Picalocta is not a collection of isolated structures. It is an organized network of streets, plazas, and residential compounds, with temples strategically positioned as centers of social, political, and spiritual life. Courtyards connect ceremonial spaces to residential areas, suggesting that ritual activity was closely intertwined with daily life, reinforcing community hierarchies and shared cultural identity. Was the layout primarily functional, symbolic, or both? And if these temples were meant to inspire awe and authority, how did their placement and orientation influence the behavior and perception of the people who lived, worked, and worshipped in this city? Artifacts recovered within the temples provide glimpses into ceremonial practices, yet raise questions as profound as they answer. Ceramic vessels, carved stone figurines, and fragments of textiles suggest offerings and ritual activity, but the precise nature of Wari religious practices remains elusive. Some spaces appear deliberately restricted or inaccessible, hinting at hierarchies of participation or secret knowledge reserved for certain members of society. Were these temples strictly religious, or did they also function as centers for governance, social control, or communal memory? And if the Wari encoded meaning in the orientation, proportions, or construction sequence of these temples, what messages have been lost to time, hidden in stone rather than written word? The broader landscape adds to the mystery. Pikalakta occupies a strategic plateau, commanding views over valleys and distant peaks. Its temples are carefully situated to exploit this vantage, both for practical oversight and perhaps symbolic purposes. Could these elevated positions have facilitated ritual observation of celestial phenomena, territorial markers, or both? Did the Wari intend the city to function as a living cosmogram, a terrestrial reflection of spiritual or cosmological principles? And if so, how much knowledge of astronomy, geography, and social organization was embedded in the placement and construction of these monumental structures? The scale of labor and coordination required to construct the Wari temples is staggering. Massive stones had to be quarried, transported, shaped, and assembled with precision, while streets, courtyards, and platforms were carefully leveled and aligned. The logistical achievement alone suggests a society with sophisticated social organization, capable of mobilizing and directing large workforces across months, years, or even decades. How was this effort organized, and how much of the process was guided by empirical knowledge versus tradition, ritual, or cultural precedent? The complexity of Pikalakta hints at a level of societal sophistication that continues to surprise archaeologists and historians alike. As one moves through the temples today, the sense of human intention is palpable. The carefully constructed stairways, elevated platforms, and precise wall alignments convey authority, devotion, and meticulous attention to spatial experience. Sunlight and shadow animate the stone, casting long lines across plazas and emphasizing particular features at specific times of day or year. Did the Wari anticipate these effects, designing with both material and light in mind to shape perception and reinforce meaning? Or is this an accidental alignment, a fortunate interaction of sun, stone, and landscape that echoes the ingenuity of its creators? Scholars continue to study Pikalakta, offering interpretations ranging from purely ceremonial to civic and administrative. Yet no single theory fully accounts for the complexity, precision, and scale of the Wari temples. Like Pavlopetri's sunken streets, Mount Nemrut's colossal heads, and the Talayot of Torolo, these structures defy easy replication. They represent the convergence of practical skill, ritual sophistication, and environmental awareness in ways that modern observers struggle to reconstruct. How much knowledge, embedded in stone, spatial arrangement, and alignment, has been lost over the centuries? What secrets remain encoded in the platforms, courtyards, and ceremonial thresholds of Pikalakta, waiting for patient study to uncover them? Perhaps the most compelling aspect of the Wari temples at Pikalakta is their enduring invitation to wonder. Here, in the Andean highlands, ancient builders created a city and sacred spaces that challenge our assumptions about what was possible in the pre-Columbian world. The stone walls, platforms, and plazas endure, inviting reflection on human skill, social organization, and spiritual imagination. What messages, knowledge, or intentions remain embedded in this city of stone? And as we traverse its streets and temples, we are reminded that even in landscapes long abandoned, human ingenuity, vision, and mystery persist, awaiting the eyes, curiosity, and imagination of those willing to observe and ponder. From the high plains of the Andes, where the Wari temples at Pikalakta rise as silent testimonies to ancient engineering, devotion, and societal organization, our journey now returns to the Mediterranean, tracing the contours of mountains and valleys to the sacred slopes of Mount Parnassus in central Greece. Here lies Delphi, once considered the navel of the ancient world, where the temple of Apollo crowns the landscape with its enduring majesty. At first glance, the temple appears as a series of stone foundations, columns, and weathered blocks, but even in its ruined state, it exudes a profound sense of presence, commanding both reverence and curiosity. The site is at once monumental and intimate, situated on terraces that descend toward the valley, creating a natural theater of human devotion, observation, and ritual. Delphi flourished from the 8th century BCE through the Roman period, a center of religious, political, and cultural significance in the ancient Greek world. The Temple of Apollo, reconstructed multiple times, was the focal point of this sacred precinct, hosting the famed oracle and serving as a stage for ritual, prophecy, and negotiation among city-states. The sheer ambition of its design and location is immediately apparent. Elevated above the valley, the temple aligns with the contours of Mount Parnassus, commanding panoramic views that amplify its authority and mystery. But beyond aesthetic or practical considerations, the temple invites deeper questions. Why was this precise location chosen? Was it the acoustic properties of the terraces, the alignment with celestial events, or something more elusive, a subtle interaction between geology, airflow, and human perception that contributed to its sanctity? The architecture of the temple itself reflects both precision and symbolism. Doric columns rise from carefully leveled foundations, proportioned with a sense of harmony that balances both human scale and divine aspiration. The cella, the inner sanctuary, once housed a cult statue of Apollo, its presence implied even in its absence. How did ancient builders achieve such refinement with tools limited to bronze, wood, and simple pulleys? And how much of their design was guided by empirical observation versus intuitive knowledge of proportion, resonance, and spatial experience? Even the alignment of the temple, slightly offset from cardinal directions, hints at intentional design, perhaps to frame the sun's rising or setting at certain times of the year, or to enhance ritual experience in ways we are only beginning to theorize. The surrounding sanctuary amplifies the mystery. Sacred treasuries, altars, statues, and processional pathways radiate from the temple, creating a complex network of spatial relationships. Pilgrims would have approached along the sacred way, passing monuments from city-states across Greece, each step preparing the visitor for the encounter with Apollo's oracle. The integration of architecture, landscape, and human movement suggests a deliberate orchestration of perception. Sightlines, sound, and spatial hierarchy all contribute to an immersive experience that is at once awe-inspiring and enigmatic. Did the ancient designers understand the psychological impact of these pathways on pilgrims? Were the terraces, stairways, and treasuries arranged to heighten anticipation, manipulate light and shadow, or mark astronomical or ceremonial events? Central to Delphi's enduring mystique is the oracle itself. Historical accounts describe Pythia, the priestess of Apollo, delivering prophecies while seated over a chasm in the earth, inhaling vapors that induced altered states of consciousness. While modern studies suggest that geological gases may have been involved, the phenomenon remains partially unexplained. How could such a natural, localized event inspire centuries of ritual, belief, and social cohesion? And how much did the physical space of the temple, its columns, acoustics, and stone layout, enhance or mediate the experience? The interplay between built environment and mystical encounter raises profound questions about the relationship between architecture, perception, and human cognition. Artifacts and inscriptions recovered from Delphi further deepen the intrigue. Dedications from city-states, votive offerings, and inscribed statues testify to a society that valued ritual, authority, and communication with the divine. Yet they also reveal selective secrecy. Certain rituals, prophecies, or practices were controlled, restricted to initiates or elite visitors. What knowledge was encoded in these objects, in their placement, orientation, or material? Were they merely tokens of devotion, or did they serve as symbolic keys to understanding a broader cosmology that integrated political, spiritual, and environmental knowledge? And if so, how much of that encoded wisdom has been lost over the millennia, leaving us to infer meaning from fragments and shadows? The temple's integration with natural features is striking. The Parnassus slopes, terraces, and surrounding valleys form both backdrop and participant in ritual experience. Stone blocks align with distant peaks, river courses, and light patterns, suggesting careful observation of geography and celestial cycles. Could this alignment have been intended to synchronize human activity with cosmic events, agricultural cycles, or seasonal celebrations? How much of the temple's power depended on these subtle interactions between earth, sky, and stone? And what might ancient visitors have perceived that modern observers can only approximate through calculation or imagination? Even today, standing amid the ruins, one senses the careful orchestration of space, scale, and narrative. The columns, though fractured, continue to frame vistas. Shadows play across terraces at dawn and dusk, evoking the intended drama of ritual. The sacred way guides the eye and foot through an environment deliberately structured to provoke awe and contemplation. The remains of the temple, like the Wari temples at Pikalakta or the monumental heads of Mount Nemrut, suggest that architecture, labor, and vision were harnessed to produce experiences that transcend the purely functional. How did the builders anticipate these interactions of light, movement, and perception? How much of the oracle's impact was dependent on the temple's physical and symbolic construction, and how much on human psychology and belief? Scholars continue to debate the temple's construction phases, function, and the nature of oracular prophecy. Some emphasize practical engineering and acoustic properties. Others focus on ritual and symbolic dimensions. Still others explore the interweaving of politics, religion, and social hierarchy. Yet no single theory fully accounts for the combination of scale, sophistication, and experiential intentionality that defines the Temple of Apollo at Delphi. Like Pikalakta, Talayot of Torello, and Mount Nemrut, the site resists replication. It embodies technical mastery, ritual complexity, and social organization that modern observers can admire but cannot fully reproduce. Perhaps the most compelling aspect of Delphi is its invitation to contemplation. The stones of the temple, the terraces, the surrounding peaks, and the echo of ancient voices together form a monument that exists at the intersection of human aspiration, spiritual imagination, and environmental mastery. What secrets remain encoded in the orientation of columns, the alignment of terraces, or the placement of dedications? How much knowledge, technical, spiritual, or social, was embedded in the design, only partially preserved in stone and myth? And as we walk the sacred way today, tracing the path of ancient pilgrims, we are reminded that human ingenuity, devotion, and mystery endure long after the builders themselves have vanished, inviting reflection, study, and imagination for generations to come. From the sacred terraces of Delphi, where the Temple of Apollo once echoed with oracular voices and ritual ceremony, our journey now moves across the Mediterranean to the rugged landscapes of Sardinia, an island of wind-sculpted hills, hidden valleys, and ancient stones that have long captivated human imagination. Here, scattered across the countryside, lie the so-called giants' tombs, monumental structures of imposing scale and enigmatic purpose, their name hinting at awe, myth, and the enduring mystery of human endeavor. At first glance, they appear deceptively simple: long, rectangular burial galleries capped by massive stone slabs, flanked by upright megaliths, and often framed by semicircular forecourts. Yet, as with Delphi, the simplicity belies a complexity of design, intention, and craftsmanship that continues to puzzle archaeologists and observers alike. The giants' tombs, or Tombe dei Giganti, were constructed during the Bronze Age, roughly between 1800 and 1200 BCE, by the Nuragic civilization, whose monumental stone towers, the Nuraghi, dot the Sardinian landscape. Unlike the Nuraghi, whose function has been debated as defensive, residential, or ceremonial, the giants' tombs appear to serve a primarily funerary role. Yet their sheer scale is extraordinary. Some measure over 30 meters in length, and their capstones weigh multiple tons. How did communities of the Bronze Age quarry, transport, and position such enormous stones using tools limited to bronze, wood, and simple rope? And why build tombs of such monumental size for individuals or groups whose identities we may never fully know? The architectural design is striking in both form and function. Most giants' tombs consist of a central burial gallery, flanked by upright stones, and often culminating in a semicircular facade that resembles a giant exedra, an architectural element that frames space and guides the observer's gaze. Some entrances are deliberately narrow, while the galleries themselves expand into wider chambers, suggesting controlled access, hierarchy, or ritual movement. Could the forecourt have served as a stage for ceremonies, offerings, or public rites? And if so, what cultural or spiritual imperatives dictated the dimensions, orientation, and materials of these spaces? Alignment is another element that has sparked intrigue. Several giants' tombs are oriented along cardinal directions or aligned with distant peaks, valleys, or the rising sun. Could these alignments have been intended to mark seasonal events, celestial occurrences, or spiritual thresholds? Or were they practical, designed to maximize stability, drainage, or sunlight within the chamber? The ambiguity is deliberate, or at least enduring, inviting speculation about the interplay between practical construction, ritual intention, and cosmological symbolism. Construction techniques provide further mystery. Stones of extraordinary size were carefully quarried and transported across uneven terrain, then positioned with precision to create durable galleries capable of withstanding centuries of erosion, seismic activity, and human activity. Some capstones span several meters without apparent support other than the flanking megaliths. How did Bronze Age builders calculate weight distribution, balance, and stability without the benefit of modern engineering knowledge? Were there techniques, tools, or communal knowledge that have since vanished, leaving us to wonder how such feats were achieved? The tombs themselves are largely empty of their original contents, though fragments of pottery, tools, and occasional jewelry suggest that they were the focus of sustained ritual activity. Were these tombs intended to house multiple generations, or were they symbolic monuments to ancestors or deities? And what can their distribution across Sardinia tell us about the social, political, and spiritual organization of the Nuragic culture? The answers remain elusive, preserved not in text, but in stone, form, and spatial arrangement. Even more enigmatic are the variations among tombs. While the basic structure, a central gallery with a semicircular forecourt, is consistent, individual tombs vary dramatically in scale, stone size, and detailing. Some forecourts are modest, others monumental, some galleries simple, others complex. Could these differences reflect the status of those interred regional variations or chronological developments over centuries? Or might they encode knowledge of astronomical, ritual, or societal significance that modern researchers struggle to decipher? Standing within the forecourt of a giant's tomb, the scale and craftsmanship are immediately apparent. The capstones tower above, casting shadows across the gallery, and the surrounding stones frame the landscape in a deliberate composition. The effect is both awe-inspiring and contemplative. Here is a place where human labor, communal organization, and spiritual imagination intersect, leaving a mark that survives millennia. How did the builders envision their labor? Were these tombs monuments to memory, devotion, or authority? And what did they hope future generations would perceive when standing among these stones? The tombs also provoke questions about cultural memory and myth. Their moniker, Giants' Tombs, suggests an ancient interpretation linking scale to mythic beings, perhaps reflecting awe at their construction or misinterpretation of human remains. Did the Nuragic people themselves imagine the tombs as the resting places of extraordinary ancestors, heroes, or divine figures? And how has the mythic framing influenced modern understanding, interpretation, and excavation of these sites? Even today, the giants' tombs resist replication. Modern archaeologists and engineers can appreciate the precision, ingenuity, and logistical skill required to quarry, transport, and assemble these stones. Yet attempts to reconstruct similar structures using Bronze Age techniques remain difficult and incomplete. Like Pikalakta, Mount Nemrut, and Delphi, the tombs exemplify a blend of technical skill, social coordination, and conceptual vision that challenges our assumptions about prehistoric societies. How much of the knowledge that guided their construction has been lost? And what secrets, encoded in orientation, scale, and stone selection, remain hidden, waiting for patient observation and analysis? The surrounding landscape reinforces the tomb's mystery. Rolling hills, rocky outcrops, and distant valleys provide context and contrast, situating each tomb within a broader network of Nuragic settlements, Nuragi towers, and ceremonial spaces. Were these tombs nodes within a ritual landscape, marking territorial, spiritual, or social networks? How did the builders perceive the relationship between each tomb, its environment, and the communities that interacted with it? And if certain features were deliberately positioned for sightlines, acoustics, or solar alignment, how much of that knowledge was symbolic, practical, or both? As one walks through the forecourt or peers into the long galleries, a sense of time suspended pervades the site. The stones, enduring and silent, preserve both labor and intent. The tombs invite reflection on mortality, memory, and human aspiration, while simultaneously challenging modern expectations of Bronze Age capability. How did people without modern tools, technology, or written records manage to conceive, coordinate, and execute such monumental works? And what might these tombs reveal about the spiritual, social, and cosmological understanding of a society long vanished from the land but preserved in stone? Perhaps the most compelling aspect of the giants' tombs is their enduring invitation to wonder. Here, on the Sardinian landscape, communities created monuments that defy replication, monuments that blend function, ritual, and scale in ways modern observers can admire but not fully reproduce. What knowledge, intention, or belief is encoded in their dimensions, orientations, and stone choices? And as we traverse these ancient corridors and forecourts today, we are reminded that human ingenuity, imagination, and devotion persist long after the builders themselves have disappeared, leaving mysteries for future generations to contemplate. From the rugged hills and monumental tombs of Sardinia, where the giants' tombs rise as enduring symbols of Bronze Age ingenuity and ritual, our journey now sweeps eastward across continents and deserts to the heart of ancient Elam, in the lowlands of southwestern Iran. Here stands Choga Zanbil, one of the few remaining ziggurats outside Mesopotamia, a monumental city-temple complex that rises from the plains like a stairway to the heavens. The structure itself is vast, its stepped terraces ascending layer upon layer, crowned with the remnants of a central shrine that once housed sacred offerings and the presence of the divine. Even in ruin, the ziggurat dominates the landscape, a testament to human ambition, spiritual vision, and technical mastery. Choga Zanbil was constructed around 1250 BCE by King Untash Napirisha of the Elamite civilization, intended as a center for worship and perhaps as a political statement of authority and divine favor. The scale of the project is immediately apparent. The ziggurat rises nearly 50 meters above the surrounding plain, with its massive brick terraces stretching over 200 meters per side at the base. Mud brick construction, reinforced with kiln-fired bricks in critical areas, speaks to a sophisticated understanding of materials and weight distribution. How did the builders coordinate such a colossal project in a remote and challenging environment? What social, political, or religious imperatives drove a king to construct a structure so vast that its shadows would dominate the surrounding settlements and fields? The architecture itself invites awe and speculation. Each terrace is carefully proportioned, forming a pyramidical series of steps that appear at once functional and symbolic. Ramps and stairways lead to higher levels, perhaps allowing priests and worshippers access to the inner sanctum. Could the ascending design have been intended as a symbolic journey, guiding participants closer to the divine with every step? Were the proportions and angles determined by empirical observation, ritual significance, or both? Even the placement of the ziggurat in relation to the surrounding temples, residential structures, and sacred precincts suggests careful planning and alignment. Yet the reasoning behind some choices remains enigmatic. The city surrounding Chogha-Zanbil adds further complexity. Temples, courtyards, and ceremonial areas surround the ziggurat in an organized urban plan, indicating a society capable of sophisticated administration, resource allocation, and labor organization. The scale of construction implies a significant workforce, coordinated over years or decades. How were logistics managed for transporting and assembling thousands of mud and kiln-fired bricks, each weighing hundreds of kilograms, without the benefit of modern machinery? Were there specialized laborers, engineers, and ritual specialists whose knowledge has since been lost? And how did the social structure of Elam support such a monumental endeavor? The ziggurat's symbolic resonance deepens the mystery. Ancient inscriptions suggest a devotion to Inshushinak, the chief deity of Susa, yet the precise rituals performed within the terraces, chambers, and altars remain speculative. Did priests conduct processions up the terraces, offering sacrifices, recitations, or celestial observations? Could certain alignments of the structure have corresponded to solstices, equinoxes, or stellar movements, as seen in other monumental religious sites around the world? The ziggurat's geometry and orientation seem intentional, yet the full significance of these choices continues to elude archaeologists, leaving space for both scholarly interpretation and wonder. Construction techniques underscore the technical sophistication of the Elamites. Mud bricks, sun-dried and kiln-fired, were arranged in a complex core and veneer pattern with internal drains to manage water and weight distribution. Despite the apparent simplicity of mud brick as a material, the builders achieved precision in leveling, alignment, and long-term durability, ensuring the structure survived centuries of rain, wind, and seismic activity. How much of this knowledge was empirical, gained through trial and error, and how much encoded in ritual or cultural tradition? Could there have been methods, now lost, that allowed ancient engineers to calculate load, drainage, and stability with remarkable accuracy? The ziggurat's terraces and chambers are rich with symbolic and practical purpose. Large brick platforms, once plastered and possibly painted, supported shrines, altars, and sacred objects. Some rooms may have housed offerings, while others served as ritual spaces or ceremonial passageways. The layout suggests hierarchy, the higher terraces reserved for elite priests or the king himself, while the lower terraces may have accommodated broader participation. Was this vertical organization intended solely for ritual purposes, or did it also reinforce social structure, demonstrating the interdependence of political power and divine authority? The broader landscape of Chogha-Zanbil further enhances the mystery. Situated near Susa, The site's visibility across the plains may have served both practical and symbolic purposes, asserting dominance, demonstrating religious devotion, and perhaps marking territorial boundaries. Could the ziggurat have functioned as both a spiritual beacon and a statement of political control? And if so, how did the builders balance the spiritual, social, and logistical demands of such a massive construction project? Even in its ruined state, the ziggurat conveys a sense of drama and deliberate experience. Sunlight and shadow play across the terraces, highlighting angles, steps, and facades in ways that may have been integral to the ceremonial impact. Processional pathways, though eroded, hint at orchestrated movement, guiding participants through spaces of increasing elevation and significance. Could the interaction of light, scale, and human perception have been deliberately considered by the designers to enhance spiritual or emotional impact? And if so, how much of this subtle orchestration was known to modern observers only through the careful study of ruins rather than written documentation? Artifacts and inscriptions, sparse but informative, offer clues to the lives, beliefs, and organization of the Elamites. Cylinder seals, votive offerings, and cuneiform inscriptions suggest a society highly attuned to ritual, record-keeping, and symbolic communication. Yet the ziggurat's full meaning remains elusive. Did the structure encode celestial knowledge, social hierarchy, or moral authority? Was it a functional temple, a symbolic monument, or some synthesis of both? And if the ziggurat served multiple purposes simultaneously, how did the builders reconcile practical construction demands with complex ritual and spiritual expectations? Choga Zanbil, like the giant's tombs of Sardinia, Delphi's Temple of Apollo, or Pikalakta's Wari temples, resists replication. Its construction required not only technical skill but visionary planning, social coordination, and cultural knowledge that modern engineers can admire but cannot fully reproduce. What knowledge, embedded in mud bricks, terraces, and city layout, has been lost to time? What experiences, rituals, or observations once unfolded within its walls that remain inaccessible to us today? And how much of its intended impact, both spiritual and social, has been obscured by centuries of decay, conquest, and erosion? Perhaps the most compelling aspect of Choga Zanbil is its enduring invitation to wonder. Rising from the plains like a stairway to the heavens, the ziggurat speaks to human ambition, spiritual imagination, and technical mastery. It challenges modern assumptions about Bronze Age capabilities while leaving a sense of awe that is difficult to quantify. What secrets remain hidden in the terraces, chambers, and city layout? And as we walk among the ruins today, observing the careful alignment, monumental scale, and meticulous construction, we are reminded that human ingenuity, devotion, and mystery can endure far beyond the lives of those who first shaped the world around them. From the monumental terraces of Choga Zanbil, where mud brick ziggurats once rose like stairways to the heavens in the plains of Elam, our journey now carries us southward across deserts and the Nile, to the sun-scorched sands of Sudan. Here, in the region once ruled by the kingdom of Kush, rise the pyramids of Meroe, slender, sharply angled monuments clustered on the desert plateau, their golden-hued stones glowing under the unrelenting sun. Unlike their Egyptian counterparts, these pyramids are smaller in base but much steeper, some reaching heights of over 30 meters, standing in silent testimony to a civilization that blended indigenous ingenuity with foreign influence, yet left mysteries that endure to this day. Meroe flourished between the 8th century BCE and the 4th century CE, serving as the royal capital of the Kingdom of Kush. The pyramids were built as tombs for kings, queens, and high-ranking officials, yet even their funerary purpose raises questions. The sheer precision of construction, the alignment of pyramids into orderly rows, and the integration of mortuary temples alongside them reflect a society capable of meticulous planning, sophisticated engineering, and enduring ritual. How did the Kushites achieve such accuracy with tools limited to stone, wood, and copper? How did they quarry, transport, and assemble massive blocks on remote desert plateaus, often without the benefit of nearby waterways or advanced machinery? And why select this steeper, narrower design, so distinct from the broader Egyptian pyramids, yet equally imposing in its visual and symbolic effect? The architecture itself evokes awe. Each pyramid features sharply inclined sides, a small chapel at its base, and internal burial chambers that remain largely unexplored or looted over millennia. Some pyramids are surrounded by stone stelae engraved with hieroglyphs or depictions of the deceased in ritual contexts, offering glimpses into beliefs, status, and artistic tradition. Yet the interiors of these monuments, their exact ceremonial use, and the process of royal interment remain shrouded in ambiguity. Did the steep design serve purely practical purposes, stability on sandy soil, or did it have symbolic meaning, representing ascent to the afterlife, spiritual protection, or a cosmic principle now lost to us? Alignment and placement within the desert landscape deepen the mystery. The pyramids are organized in clusters, often with precise orientation along cardinal points, or with respect to nearby temples, roads, or sacred sites. Some appear deliberately positioned to mark solar events, such as the rising or setting sun during solstices, while others seem to frame distant hills or river valleys. Were these alignments purely ceremonial, intended to guide the soul's journey, or were they markers of territorial authority, social hierarchy, or political networks? And if these choices encoded complex knowledge of astronomy or cosmology, how much of that understanding has been irretrievably lost? Construction techniques continue to intrigue scholars. The Kushites relied primarily on locally quarried sandstone, shaping each block with remarkable precision. Despite their modest size compared to Egypt's pyramids, the steep angle creates significant structural stress, demanding careful engineering to prevent collapse. How did laborers achieve such coordination and precision across decades of work? Were there master builders, engineers, or ritual specialists whose knowledge was passed down orally and through hands-on apprenticeship, now vanished from history? And to what extent did ceremonial or religious principles guide the process, intertwining practical construction with spiritual or social imperatives? The integration of pyramids with mortuary temples and surrounding settlements reinforces their dual purpose, spiritual and political. Temples provided a space for offerings, ceremonies, and ancestral veneration, while the pyramids themselves marked the authority, memory, and divine association of the deceased. The combination of scale, precision, and ritual context suggests that these structures were not mere tombs but deliberate instruments of cultural continuity and societal cohesion. How did such planning and organization occur in a pre-industrial society, where resources, labor, and knowledge were finite and communication difficult? And what knowledge, encoded in the pyramid's angles, orientation, and layout, remains inaccessible to modern interpretation? Artifacts and inscriptions associated with the Meroe pyramids offer tantalizing clues. Stelae depict kings and queens in ritualized poses, inscribed with hieroglyphs that fuse Egyptian and Kushite elements. Funerary goods, pottery, and jewelry recovered from looted tombs hint at elaborate burial practices, yet the full spectrum of ritual activity remains speculative. Were these pyramids strictly funerary, or did they also serve as astronomical observatories, political statements, or spiritual beacons for the living? And if symbolic meaning was encoded in architectural proportions, orientations, or the placement of temples, how much of that knowledge has been obscured by centuries of environmental erosion, human interference, and the passage of time? The desert setting itself adds to the mystery. Isolated, exposed to the harsh winds and sun, the plateau amplifies the visual dominance of the pyramids. Travelers approaching from miles away would first see a forest of stone peaks rising above the sand, a manifestation of power, spiritual significance, and human ingenuity. How much of this impact was intentional, designed to impress, intimidate, or inspire awe? And how did the natural environment, the shifting sands, prevailing winds, and changing light, interact with the design to create sensory experiences that reinforced ritual and social meaning? Even today, standing among the pyramids of Meroe, one senses the combination of practical achievement and spiritual vision. The slender silhouettes, aligned in precise rows, evoke questions of intention, technique, and purpose. How did the Kushites reconcile technical demands with ritual requirements, and how did they imagine the journey of the deceased ascending the steep slopes of the pyramids? What knowledge, encoded in stone, proportion, and landscape, has been lost to time, leaving modern observers to marvel without fully comprehending? Scholars continue to study the pyramids, comparing them to their Egyptian predecessors, examining hieroglyphic inscriptions, and analyzing construction methods. Yet no single theory fully accounts for the scale, precision, and symbolic depth of these monuments. Like Choga Zanbil, Delphi, Pikilakta, and the Giants' Tombs, the pyramids of Meroe resist replication. They are the product of technical skill, social coordination, spiritual imagination, and environmental awareness that modern engineers and historians can admire but cannot fully reproduce. Perhaps the most compelling aspect of Meroe is its enduring invitation to wonder. Rising from the desert sands like jagged beacons of memory and devotion, these pyramids embody a civilization that balanced engineering, ritual, and authority in ways that continue to challenge our assumptions. What secrets remain hidden within their chambers, along their terraces, or in their precise alignment with the landscape? And as we walk among these monuments today, tracing the contours of ancient ambition and belief, we are reminded that human ingenuity, devotion, and mystery can endure for millennia, leaving questions for future generations to contemplate and mysteries to inspire endless reflection. From the sun-scorched sands of Meroe, where Kushite kings ascended their sharply angled pyramids in the heart of the desert, our journey now crosses oceans and landscapes to the mist-shrouded waters of the American Midwest. Beneath the tranquil, glassy surface of Lake Michigan, near the western shores of the Great Lakes, lies a submerged enigma, what has been called the Lake Michigan Stonehenge. Unlike the monumental pyramids or ziggurats of distant lands, this site is hidden, obscured by water and time, offering only fleeting glimpses through sonar scans, diver reports, and sediment mapping. Yet even beneath the lake, the formations suggest deliberate construction, symmetry, and an intent that challenges conventional understanding of pre-Columbian engineering in the region. First discovered in the early 2000s by a combination of underwater archaeology and sonar imaging, the site consists of large stones arranged in a geometric pattern, some reportedly weighing several tons. Divers describe circular and oval alignments, linear pathways, and clusters of stones that appear deliberately positioned rather than randomly scattered by glacial activity or natural deposition. Could this truly be a ceremonial or astronomical site, echoing the circular megaliths of Europe or the Americas? And if so, how did ancient builders coordinate such precision under environmental constraints that included shifting sediments, water currents, and a lack of durable construction materials? Radiocarbon dating and sediment analysis place some of the stones beneath layers of lakebed accumulated over thousands of years, suggesting the structures predate the current lake level. At times, during periods of lower water, parts of the formation might have been above ground, accessible to prehistoric communities. Could these stones have served as markers, ceremonial platforms, or gathering spaces? And if so, for what purpose? Ritual, navigation, social cohesion, or something more enigmatic now lost to history? The challenge lies not only in dating the stones, but in interpreting their function without written records or clear cultural analogues in the region. The configuration itself is striking. Some reports describe stones positioned in circular arrays, reminiscent of Stonehenge in England or the calendars of Mesoamerica, while others form linear alignments that may correspond to solstitial sunrise or sunset points. Could these placements indicate astronomical knowledge, tracking lunar cycles, solar movement, or seasonal changes? If so, the builders would have needed careful observation, planning, and repeated verification over years or decades, all accomplished without compasses, written mathematics, or modern surveying tools. How much of this knowledge was empirical, passed down orally through generations, and how much may have been encoded in ritual practice, symbolism, or mythology? Equally puzzling is the scale of effort required. Some stones are enormous, requiring significant labor to move and position, especially given the absence of mechanical advantage. Were these monoliths transported from distant quarries or sourced locally? How did ancient communities lift and stabilize them, particularly if the site was partially or seasonally submerged? And what social structure supported such an ambitious undertaking? Did it require a centralized authority, skilled laborers, or widespread communal participation? The answers remain elusive, buried beneath centuries of sediment, water, and speculation. Sediment layers and geological context add further complexity. The lake's currents, wave action, and glacial deposits have shifted stones over millennia, making precise reconstruction challenging. Yet patterns persist, suggesting deliberate placement rather than chance. Could the site have served multiple functions over time, perhaps initially as a dryland ceremonial site, later partially submerged and adapted to aquatic activities or local cosmology? And how did environmental change, including rising lake levels after the last ice age, influence the site's use, perception, and eventual abandonment? Comparisons to other ancient megalithic sites underscore both the mystery and the plausibility of human ingenuity. Around the world, prehistoric societies constructed stone circles, ceremonial platforms, and astronomical observatories with remarkable precision, often using techniques that modern engineers can admire but cannot fully replicate without modern machinery. Could the Lake Michigan site represent a similar fusion of observation, ritual, and labor, adapted to the unique environmental context of the Great Lakes region? Or might it reflect a cultural phenomenon now entirely lost to the archaeological record, leaving only echoes in stone and sediment? Artifacts associated with nearby shores or recovered from the lake bed are sparse, though occasional lithic tools, pottery fragments, and hearth remains suggest prehistoric human occupation in the area. Yet no direct evidence has been recovered linking these artifacts conclusively to the stone formation itself. Did the builders leave little behind by design, relying on the stones themselves as markers of ritual, memory, or cosmological significance? And if the site was ceremonial, could oral tradition have preserved its meaning, only to vanish as communities migrated, dissolved, or adapted to changing environmental conditions? The underwater context also shapes perception and interpretation. Submersion conceals scale, texture, and alignment, while sediment and biofilm obscure fine details. Divers describe the experience as eerie and otherworldly. Shafts of sunlight filtering through the water illuminate stones in ways that heighten the sense of mystery, suggesting intentionality even where certainty remains elusive. How much of the site's significance depended on its original environment, its interaction with water, light, and human approach? And what might modern observers be missing, viewing a partially hidden relic through technology rather than in its original context? Even today, the Lake Michigan Stonehenge resists replication. Modern archaeologists, historians, and engineers can speculate about methods, intention, and function, but few can reproduce the precision, scale, and geometric alignment suggested by sonar and dive surveys. Like the pyramids of Meroe, Choga-Zanbil, or the Giants' Tombs, the site embodies a combination of technical skill, communal organization, and visionary planning that challenges our understanding of prehistoric North American societies. How much knowledge, skill, or cultural intent has been lost beneath centuries of water and sediment? And what secrets, once encoded in stone, remain hidden from our gaze? Perhaps the most compelling aspect of this submerged site is the invitation to reflection. Beneath Lake Michigan's surface lies not just stone, but an enduring testament to human curiosity, effort, and imagination. It prompts questions about lost civilizations, environmental change, and the capacity of prehistoric societies to manipulate their landscapes in ways both practical and symbolic. What stories, rituals, or astronomical knowledge were embedded in these stones? And as we probe the depths today, guided by sonar and dive lights, we are reminded that some mysteries, like the site itself, remain tantalizingly beyond reach, inviting endless wonder, contemplation, and exploration. From the submerged stones of Lake Michigan, where hidden alignments beneath the waters call to mind the forgotten practices of ancient builders, our journey now shifts to the stark and unforgiving desert of the American Southwest. Here, among the red mesas and deep canyons of the Colorado Plateau, lies a mystery as ancient as the land itself, the disappearance of the Anasazi, an enigmatic culture whose grand cities, sophisticated agricultural techniques, and striking architecture left a lasting imprint on the region, only to fade away without a trace. Theirs is a story of triumph, ingenuity, and ultimately, disappearance. The Anasazi, or ancestral Puebloans, as they are also known, flourished between 1000 BCE and 1300 CE in what is now the Four Corners region of the United States, where the states of Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado, and Utah meet. These people are best known for their awe-inspiring cliff dwellings and their vast, intricate ceremonial and trade centers. The most iconic of their sites is Chaco Canyon, once the center of a powerful and thriving society. Here, in the high desert, the Anasazi constructed multi-story buildings, called great houses, that soared 4 or 5 stories high, built with millions of stones without the help of metal tools. Each building was carefully aligned with astronomical features, like the rising sun and the solstices, hinting at a deep understanding of celestial events. Yet, as impressive as Chaco Canyon and its surrounding villages were, the Anasazi left behind no written records. We have no texts, no inscriptions, no definitive accounts of their daily lives, their struggles, or their reasons for leaving. What we are left with are the ruins, empty, silent, and for the most part, abandoned long before the arrival of Europeans in the Americas. By the end of the 12th century, Chaco Canyon, once a bustling hub of cultural and spiritual activity, was in decline. Around 1150 CE, its population dwindled. By 1300 CE, the Anasazi had all but vanished from their grand cities. But what happened to them? Where did they go? And why did such a sophisticated society crumble so suddenly? Theories abound, but answers remain elusive. One of the leading explanations for the Anasazi disappearance is the role of environmental factors. The desert climate is harsh and unforgiving, and the region is prone to long periods of drought. In fact, tree ring data from the region suggests a series of severe droughts during the time of the Anasazi decline. These droughts could have crippled their agricultural system, which was based on irrigated crops like corn, beans, and squash. Without water, the Anasazi would have struggled to sustain their populations, leading to famine, conflict, and ultimately migration. Yet while environmental factors may have played a significant role, they alone do not fully explain the dramatic collapse. After all, the Anasazi were adept at surviving in this harsh environment. They had developed sophisticated farming techniques, including irrigation systems that allowed them to divert water from streams to their fields. Could a simple lack of water have been enough to cause such a sudden and widespread collapse? Or was something else at play? Some archaeologists have proposed that social factors may have been equally, if not more, significant in the downfall of the Anasazi. The society in Chaco Canyon was highly stratified, with a complex system of social hierarchy. Evidence from the ruins suggests that the elites controlled access to resources, and that their power was intimately tied to religious and ceremonial practices. The great houses were not just homes. They were ceremonial centers, places where leaders likely conducted rituals that reinforced their authority. As resources dwindled and the challenges of drought grew more severe, the tension between the elites and the common people may have intensified, leading to social unrest. Was the Anasazi collapse the result of internal strife, as the social fabric tore under the pressure of dwindling resources? Moreover, the Anasazi's remarkable architectural feats, including the intricate multi-story cliff dwellings, could also have had a symbolic purpose beyond mere shelter. The cliff dwellings, built into the sides of sheer rock faces, were difficult to access, providing a defensive advantage against raids or invasions. Could the fall of Chaco Canyon have been caused by external threats, such as warfare with neighboring tribes or nomadic groups? Some evidence, such as skeletal remains showing signs of violence, hints at the possibility of conflict. Yet, there is little concrete evidence to suggest that the Anasazi faced a direct military threat capable of driving their disappearance. The mysteries surrounding the Anasazi's abandonment are compounded by the fact that their descendants, today's Pueblo, Hopi, and Zuni tribes, continue to live in the region. Why would a people with such advanced knowledge of agriculture, astronomy, and construction simply vanish from the landscape? Another intriguing aspect of the Anasazi disappearance is the role of migration. As Chaco Canyon and other settlements began to decline, the Anasazi gradually moved to other areas, such as the mesas of Mesa Verde, and eventually to the Rio Grande Valley. Did the Anasazi abandon their settlements in search of more fertile land, or were they fleeing a cultural and spiritual collapse? The sudden shift in settlement patterns is striking. Entire communities packed up and relocated to new, often less accessible locations. Could the migration have been driven by a collective desire to escape the crumbling political and social order of Chaco Canyon? But there are other, more speculative theories about the Anasazi disappearance, ideas that stretch the boundaries of traditional archaeology. Some have suggested that the Anasazi's decline was not due to environmental or social factors alone, but rather the result of a spiritual crisis. The Anasazi were deeply connected to their land and their religious practices. Could a dramatic shift in religious beliefs or cosmological understanding have led to their departure? Were the spiritual leaders of the time guiding their people away from their ancestral homes as part of a larger, unrecorded transition to a new phase of existence? Some have even proposed that the Anasazi were led to abandon their lands in response to cosmic events, perhaps linked to celestial phenomena such as solar or lunar eclipses or the alignment of the stars. Others have raised even more unusual theories. Could the Anasazi have been involved in advanced technologies or practices, such as the use of energy fields or astronomical instruments, that we have yet to fully understand? Some believe that the disappearance of the Anasazi could be tied to a greater global phenomenon of ancient civilizations whose knowledge and understanding were so far ahead of their time that they were lost to history. While these ideas remain speculative and largely outside the mainstream, they invite us to consider the Anasazi disappearance not just as a collapse, but as a transition, a mysterious turning point in a culture whose full potential we may never fully comprehend. As we stand before the ruins of the Anasazi, gazing upon the empty cliff dwellings, the silent kivas, and the remnants of once vibrant communities, we are reminded that the story of this great civilization is far from over. The Anasazi left us with a profound legacy of architecture, culture, and knowledge. Yet, the true reasons behind their mysterious disappearance remain tantalizingly out of reach. What happened to the Anasazi? Was it the relentless forces of nature, the collapse of their social structure, or something more profound, a cosmic event, or a spiritual awakening? The answers, if they exist, are buried in the desert sands, hidden in the stones of Chaco Canyon and the cliff dwellings of Mesa Verde. And as modern archaeologists continue to piece together the puzzle, the mystery of the Anasazi's disappearance invites us to look deeper, into the past, into the unknown, and into the very nature of human resilience and vulnerability. The journey through the unexplained continues, taking us now to the mist-laden hills of Ireland, where the passage tombs, remnants of an ancient civilization, rise from the earth, shrouded in both history and mystery. We are drawn to Sifen Passage Tomb, a site that offers not only a glimpse into the ancient practices of its builders, but also a puzzle that remains unsolved to this day. Nestled atop the Slieve Bloom Mountains in County Lewis, Sifen is part of a network of Neolithic passage tombs that dot the Irish landscape. At first glance, the site is deceptively simple: a stone cairn perched on a hill, its weathered surface a silent testament to the passage of time. Yet, as we step closer and observe the structure, the tomb reveals itself as something more. This mound, which measures over 15 meters in diameter, conceals within it a complex system of stone chambers and a narrow passage that stretches deep into its heart. It is a place where the lines between the physical world and the spiritual realm seem to blur, and where the dead were thought to be transported into the afterlife. The tomb's passage, aligned precisely with the rising sun on the winter solstice, suggests an intimate connection to celestial events. The alignment of many passage tombs, including Sifen, with significant astronomical phenomena raises an important question. Was the tomb constructed with the intention of linking the world of the living with that of the dead through cosmic forces? Why would the builders, some 5,000 years ago, go to such lengths to synchronize their burial practices with the heavens above? As we walk the site, there is a palpable sense of connection to the past. The walls of the passage tomb are lined with massive stones, carefully placed and arranged in a way that suggests a high degree of planning and expertise. These stones, though weathered by millennia of wind and rain, stand as a testament to the advanced engineering skills of the people who constructed them. It is a remarkable feat of prehistoric architecture, one that raises questions about the techniques employed by these ancient builders. How did they transport such heavy stones to such a remote and elevated location? What tools did they have, and how did they carve and shape these stones with such precision? The true mystery of Sifen, however, lies not only in its construction, but in its function and purpose. Why was it built in such an isolated location? Sifen is not part of a larger settlement or community, and it is situated far from any known trade routes or other significant sites. Unlike some other passage tombs in Ireland, which are found near clusters of dwellings, Sifen appears to have been built in a place removed from the everyday lives of the people. Was it designed to be a pilgrimage site, a place where people journeyed to honor their ancestors or commune with the divine? Or was it, as some have suggested, a site reserved only for the elite or priestly class, where the mysteries of life and death were explored in private rituals? The burial practices associated with Sifen provide another tantalizing clue. Human remains have been found within the tomb, though the evidence suggests that not all of those interred here were buried in the same way. Some were placed in simple graves, while others were carefully positioned in ceremonial chambers, their bodies adorned with offerings. This variability in burial practices points to a complex belief system, one that may have involved different rites for different individuals, depending on their status or role in society. Could the tomb have been part of a larger, more complex spiritual system that has long since faded from memory? Many of the passage tombs in Ireland, including Seafin, are thought to have served as places of ancestor worship, where the dead were revered and their spirits believed to hold power over the living. Perhaps the alignment with the solstice was a way of harnessing the power of the sun to guide the dead to their next realm, ensuring their continued influence over the lives of their descendants. Or perhaps it was a symbolic gesture intended to connect the world of the living with the eternal cycles of the cosmos. The astronomical alignment is particularly striking. Why, after thousands of years, would such a remote site still be perfectly aligned with the solstice? It raises questions about the knowledge and motivations of the people who built it. Were they deeply connected to the rhythms of nature, or was their understanding of the stars far more advanced than we give them credit for? The precision of the alignment suggests that the builders may have had a sophisticated understanding of the solar calendar, one that allowed them to mark the passage of time with uncanny accuracy. Could the builders of Seafin have been part of a wider tradition of astronomical knowledge that spanned across ancient Europe? Was there a shared cosmological vision that linked distant cultures through their understanding of the heavens? Equally puzzling is the tomb's location and its relationship to other burial sites. Seafin is not an isolated example of Neolithic tomb building, but it stands apart from many other passage tombs in Ireland due to its distinctive positioning on a mountaintop. Many other tombs are built in valleys, close to water sources or fertile land, where they would have been easily accessible to the community. Seafin's location atop a mountain, far from resources, suggests that it was intentionally placed there for a specific symbolic purpose. Was it the highest point in the land, a place where the veil between the world of the living and the dead was thought to be thinner? Was it a deliberate choice to build this sacred structure in a place where it could be seen as a conduit between the heavens and the earth? This leads to yet another layer of speculation. Could Seafin have been designed for a specific ritual or spiritual purpose that we simply do not understand today? The Neolithic people of Ireland were known for their intricate and symbolic burial practices, often involving elaborate rites, ceremonial feasts, and the offering of objects and tools to accompany the dead. Perhaps the tomb was a place for individuals to experience a profound transformation, a place where they could journey into the spirit world and receive wisdom from their ancestors or from the divine. Did the builders of Seafin believe that by aligning their tomb with the solstice, they could somehow influence the forces of nature or channel the energies of the sun for spiritual purposes? One of the most fascinating aspects of Seafin is that despite its ancient origins, the tomb remains largely unexplored. Modern archaeological techniques have provided some insights into its structure and function, but much remains unknown. The tomb's labyrinthine passageways, the hidden chambers beneath the cairn, and the significance of the carvings that adorn its walls have yet to be fully decoded. What secrets are hidden within the tomb? Is there something more to its construction? Perhaps a hidden chamber or an unknown ritual, waiting to be discovered? As we reflect on the mystery of Seafin, we are reminded of the vastness of what we still do not know. The tomb, with its weathered stones and silent passageways, is a portal to a world long gone, a world where the people who built it were deeply attuned to the natural rhythms of the earth, the sky, and the cosmos. And though much has been forgotten over the millennia, the tomb stands as a reminder that the ancient builders of Ireland, with their mysterious knowledge of the heavens, were far more connected to the spiritual world than we can fully comprehend. Perhaps, as we continue to study and explore, we will find answers to the questions that have puzzled us for so long. Or perhaps the answers are hidden in the very stones of Sifin, waiting for the right moment to reveal themselves. In the quiet solitude of the Sleeve Bloom Mountains, with the tomb standing watch over the surrounding landscape, we are left to wonder, what was the true purpose of Sifin Passage Tomb? Was it a sacred site of worship, a cosmic temple that bridged the gap between life and death, or something far more mysterious than we can yet understand?